Hey, it's probably gonna be one of those annoying things podcasters do where they have like the same audio at the beginning of all their stuff, but of course it goes to the original creator of the story in Kudo or like or whatever platform it's on. Show positive feedback so that the creator knows, because obviously you're hearing their story being told, but they don't know that unless you go back to the website and show that. So you do that. Anyway. Hello everyone. I had to restart this intro like 7 times because I keep accidentally saying swear words in the beginning, and I think like the algorithm like hates if you say swear words too early. So what was I saying? So I said that yeah, I just went for a run outside. It's like 11 p.m. right now, and I'm low-key out of shape. So I'm trying to grow that dumpy back. You know what I mean? Because I'm gonna be dancing this semester. I'm gonna be dancing flamenco this semester. I'm gonna be the American, I know one. I only know like one. I only know like one flamenco dancer. I don't even know like Carmen and Maya. I don't even watch like the dances for real. I just listen to the music. But one more thing I gotta say before we start: Krispy Kreme, don't buy that. They're disgusting. Krispy Kreme is like the bottom of the barrel donut. Too much sugar. I literally, I can't say it, but I didn't have a good time in the restroom. I can't phrase the one I want. I can't phrase the way I want to, but that's too much sugar. My body couldn't like process that. Like I was low-key dying when I ate that. So without further ado, let's start. Chapter 9: The Weight of Two Lights. Sunset's tiny hoof tapped on the imposing wooden door of Princess Celestia's chamber. She didn't want to be a burden, but she couldn't sleep either. Not with the raging storm outside. Another crack of thunder shook the castle, rattling her chest like it wanted to tear its way inside. She whimpered and knocked again, harder this time. Come in. She heard the princess's voice from inside, and she didn't hesitate to barge right in, closing the door behind her. Celestia wasn't sleeping yet. She was laying on a few cushions next to the chimney, going through some documents, but she looked up with curiosity when the young unicorn entered the room. Everything all right, son? My little son? She asked gently. She flattened her ear, suddenly nervous. Hold on, I don't know if I read this already. Because didn't we just read the part where she looked at the mirror? Oh, okay, no, this is different. I'm sorry. I'll keep reading. She flattened her ear, suddenly nervous. She knew the princess was an important pony, always busy, never to be disturbed lightly. Still, she had been good to her ever since she took her in. She had assured her she'd always have time for her. It'll be fine, right? Come here. Celestia smiled and lifted up a wing, beckoning her to her side, and Sunset wasted no time running towards her and nuzzling on her soft fur, enjoying the protective warmth of her wing when she draped it over her. Did the storm scare you? She asked gently. I'm not scared, she blurted too quickly, her cheeks burning. She didn't want to be seen as weak in front of the princess. She wanted her to be proud of her. All right. By the princess's amused tone, it was obvious she hadn't believed her, but she let it drop for now. Still, you're welcome to stay if you want. I could use the company. Sunset smiled and scooted closer to her, laying next to her side, closing her eyes and smiling with mirth. She felt like as long as she was with the princess, nothing could hurt her. Nothing could scare her. Nothing could make her cry. Celestia would protect her. She'd be there for her no matter what. Right? She loved her. She knew that she was just the princess's pupil, but it was moments like this, warm, intimate calm, that made her wonder if maybe, just maybe, she meant more for her than that. She was an orphan after all, and all the princess had picked and the princess had picked her out of all the other fillies, to take her to the palace and give her a home. Surely there had been more there than explicitly stated, right? Perhaps the princess couldn't admit it in public due to her royal obligations, but in this quiet, tender moment with only the two of them present, maybe it'd be different. But, Princess, the filly spoke, now without a hint of nervousness. Still, when the alicorn's gentle eyes landed on her, she felt her fears and insecurities start to melt away. I just wanted to ask. She took a deep breath, mustering every bit of courage to keep talking. Would it be okay if I called you Mom? She felt Celestia's body stiffen next to her, and she scrambled into a sitting position, frantically trying to clarify what she meant, fearing rejection. I mean, just here, just here, when it's just the two of us. The princess stared at her for a few agonizing moments, not angry, not judging, just contemplative. Contemplative. I already said it right the first time. Was she actually considering it? Sunset's heart started thumping inside her chest with anticipation, and she sat a bit straighter, expectant. Sunset. When the princess finally spoke, her voice was sad, almost remorseful. Sunset's stomach twisted even more before she said anything else. You know I'm not your mother, right? I, I know. Her ears dropped. I just thought it's all right. The princess assured her with the same tone she used whenever Sunset made a mistake during her lessons. The young filly shifted uncomfortably and lowered her gaze. This felt like a rejection, and it hurt. It hurt more than any scolding or any punishment. It hurt like a sharp stab to her heart. She blinked back tears and tried to compose herself, but it was nearly impossible. When the princess's hoof lifted up her face, Sunset refused to look in her eyes, scared of what she'd find there. I can't be your mother, Celestia reiterated, but I'll always be there for you as your mentor, for whatever you need, all right? Sunset pulled away but still nodded. Then, without saying a word, she lay down to the princess again, closing her eyes tightly to hide her tears, hoping that Celestia would assume her trembling was from the cold. The warmth of her wing returned as the princess positioned it over her, but suddenly it didn't feel as comforting anymore. She was so stupid. Why would Celestia want her? Why would any pony want her? Not even her parents had, so why would the princess want to take on that role instead? No, Sunset was an orphan and she would remain as such. Forever. Still, as she felt the princess's wing gently rub at her side, trying to comfort her, and she heard her start to gently hum a calming melody, Sunset clung to a single impossible hope, that if she studied hard enough, if she kept learning magic, someday the princess would deem her worthy to be by her side, not as her pupil but as her equal, as her daughter. Sunset's eyes opened, but it took her a moment to regain her bearings. One look at her hands confirmed that she wasn't in Equestria, but the warmth enveloping her and the melodious humming felt a little too familiar. It was as if she were still in her dream, even down to the dull ache in her heart. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, and felt something slide off her back. A blanket. Finally, she remembered where she was. The couch in Principal Celestia's house. She had fallen asleep there after refusing to go back to her room but still deciding to stay. A quick scan revealed that the backpack with her belongings was nowhere to be found. Sleep well? A voice to her left asked, and Sunset snapped towards it, only to find Celestia's calm, smiling face. So she had been the one humming. Had she also put the blanket on her? Had she taken her backpack to her room? Sunset's irritation was already flaring. As if, she answered defensively, rolling her eyes. Funny you say that, given that it's already afternoon. The woman turned to look at the clock, which now read 1:46. I say that this means you slept about 16 hours? Sunset's eyes widened. Had she really slept that long? Well, aside from a little walk at night, but even then, that couldn't have taken more than just 2 hours. It's all right, Celestia assured her, an amused smile on her face. I just want to know why you decided to sleep on the couch. At this, Sunset looked away with a pang of shame inside her, although she also felt relief that it didn't seem like Luna had told her sister about what happened last night. Was the bed not to your liking? Sunset chanced to glaze at her, and she noticed that her expression was more curious than judgmental, so she decided to at least give her that. This also meant that it was unlikely Celestia had been the one to take her belongings upstairs, because otherwise she probably would have commented about it, or at least been more concerned. So had it been Luna? Sunset couldn't help feeling relieved if that was the case. Saved her some uncomfortable explaining. Not really, she simply said, not wanting to dwell on the matter any further. I'm sorry to hear that. The woman's expression was actually apologetic, but then it turned slightly mischievous. Perhaps we should make the couch your room. Despite being very clear that she was joking, Sunset still answered with a shake of her head. No. She looked down at the plush fabric on the couch, not that different from the cushions that Princess Celestia had in her room. She swallowed a knot in her throat. I'll get used to it. The principal hummed in acknowledgement and took a sip of tea from the mug that had previously been on the coffee table. The smell made Sunset's stomach turn peppermint, of course, just like the princess. Oh, the sun had made Sunset's stomach turn peppermint, of course, just like the princess. I think we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. She started, and Sunset had to resist the urge to roll her eyes. I realize now that perhaps I made you feel like I was trying to break your boundaries, and believe me, that wasn't my intention. But this is all new to me, so you have to speak up if I cross a line, okay? You mean like taking me away from my home just so I can be your charity case? The words came out of her mouth harshly, before Sunset could stop them. She winced in her own voice and looked away. I'm I'm sorry. Celestia's eyes saddened, but she tried to hide it with a smile. I understand why you might feel that way. Sunset shook her head. No, I should be grateful, but she slumped further into the couch as if it could somehow help her carry the heavy weight she felt on her shoulders. I guess that. Her head fell back and her eyes landed on the ceiling, trying to ignore Celestia's gaze on her, and how exposed it made her feel. Part of me sees it as a sort of failure. She admitted with the grimace, barely able to drag the words out of her mouth. I should have been able to take care of myself without anyone's help until I graduated. She knew how foolish that might sound. A teenager taking care of herself? She didn't even have a proper place to stay. How stupid she'd been. Of course someone would notice eventually. And of course it'd be the worst kind of person possible. Someone who would actually do something about it. Celestia took a few moments to respond, but when she did, her voice was soft, compassionate. Personally, I would have preferred it if you had sought help sooner, she admitted. But there's also something admirable about the way you survived in a foreign world, all by yourself. Sunset scoffed at her words. I'm serious. Most humans would struggle to even keep themselves fed, much less maintain the appearance that nothing's wrong. Well, humans are pathetic creatures, Sunset answered, her arrogance flaring up to shield her from the genuine compliment. Still, her voice sounded tired rather than genuinely proud. And I was once the most powerful unicorn in all of Equestria. The princess's prized pupil. Of course I could pull it off. Celestia smiled despite herself. Well, I guess that explains why you always got top grades. There was a hint of pride in her voice, similar to the praise Sunset often used to get from her mentor, that managed to invert itself into Sunset's chest like a warm sip of tea in a cold night. It almost made the teen lower her defenses, but the principal's next words ruined it. Why don't you tell me about it, about this princess? I suppose it's not Twilight Sparkle, is it? Though hesitant, her question carried a clear air of curiosity mixed with concern. No. Sunset's eyes hardened and her whole body stiffened. Suddenly the couch didn't seem as comfortable anymore. It's somebody else. When she said nothing else, Celestia seemed to take the hint. I'm sorry if it's a touchy subject. Her voice was slightly dejected but showing restraint. Sunset shook her head. It's in the past. I don't care. Yet her defensive tone and her refusal to answer suggested otherwise. Still, Celestia didn't press. Well, I'm still here if you ever want to talk about it. She waited for a few moments, but when Sunset just kept staring at the ceiling without saying anything, she relented, standing up. I'll prepare lunch. Any preferences? Sunset shook her head, finally turning to look at the principal. I'm sure anything you will prepare will be better than cafeteria food. A hint of a teasing smile appeared on the girl's face. I'm sorry, the budget doesn't really allow us to buy better ingredients. At least Celestia seemed to be somewhat ashamed about it, but she smiled regardless. Hey, it kept me going for nearly 3 years, so I guess I can't complain. The girl shrugged. Surprisingly, she found herself feeling more at ease with the Celestia than she had been the previous night, although she wasn't sure why. Perhaps because she hadn't pressed about her past and she wasn't smothering her with gifts and attention this time. As the woman retreated towards the kitchen, Sunset's gaze wandered to the stairs. Her throat tightened. She could almost feel the door to the guest room waiting for her at the top, the same suffocating space that had driven her out in the first place. Unpacking meant admitting she was staying. Staying meant depending on Celestia. And depending on Celestia? Well, she'd already lived that story once, and she remembered how it ended with a painful clarity. She let out a heavy sigh and slumped deeper into the couch, as if maybe she could sink into these cushions and avoid choosing altogether. But then her eyes drifted to the blanket that had slid off her and realized it was a dark blue color. It also smelled faintly of pine needles and something fresh she couldn't place. Not Celestia's peppermint, but something softer. If it had been Luna who put it on her, the idea settled over her like the cloth itself, light and comforting. And that hope, small and fragile as it was, loosened something in her chest. If it could have been Luna, maybe she wasn't repeating the same story over and over again, or all over again. And if it wasn't the same story, maybe it wouldn't end the same way either. Her body betrayed her mind. Before she could second guess herself, she pushed up off the couch. Her legs felt stiff, heavy, like each step towards the stairs was dragging her deeper into something she couldn't escape. She paused at the foot of the staircase, hand brushing the railing, her pulse quickening. This was it. She was about to take the first step into a life she wasn't sure she wanted. But it was fine. She hadn't compromised, she hadn't promised anything. She only wanted to see quietly on her own terms whether accepting Celeste's help, annoying as it was, would be beneficial with a third party looking out for her. And so, slowly, stubbornly, she climbed. Sunset finished unpacking rather quickly. Not a surprise, of course. Her material possessions were considerably few. The books and the folders were placed upon the desk. The clothes went to the closet. Her new cell phone inside her backpack and her guitars. She wasn't really sure where to put them. Perhaps under the bed. She didn't see any other place, so she was about to do just that, but then hesitated. When was the last time she'd played? Since she broke up with Flash? Her hand caressed the weathered cloth of the guitar's bag, hesitating. Then swiftly, as if out of impulse, she opened it, revealing the acoustic guitar inside. The smell of wood invaded her nose, and she found herself smiling despite herself. This one she hadn't played in almost a year. She was pretty sure right now one of the strings was broken, the fourth one, of course. It was always the fourth one. She shook her head as if the guitar had disappointed her, but she took it out of the bag, along with the spare string, and got to work changing it. I'm gonna be real with y'all. The fourth string, that's cap. For me, it's always the fucking third string. I don't know why. It's always like my third string just snapped like a few days ago, and I had high tension La Bella 2001 flamenco strings, and that bitch broke in like a month. And literally, when I was back at home during the winter break with my other guitar, I had light tension, like I think it was light tension La Bella 2001 strings. The fucking third one snapped like right before I left. So I was like, okay, I guess that's a good way to leave back to college. But when I came here, the fucking third string snapped again. I had to put fucking these like cheap ass classical guitar string Zinkler on the third string, and is the other ones are high tension. So it's just like one brown. I don't know why the fuck they make the classical guitar strings fucking brown. Like when you buy a classical guitar, they give you these fucking cheap ass brown strings on it. And then when you buy actual strings, they're white, but okay. So I just have like one brown string and all white strings on the fucking guitar. It's kind of tacky, but yeah, it's just tacky. There's nothing else to say. Um, she had almost forgotten how annoying it was to do it. Yeah, it is. And a smile tugged at her lips when she remembered Flash teaching her how, and then teasing her when she couldn't do it. Back then, she'd been so frustrated. She even got Flash to do it for her despite his protest. It was almost nostalgic, she supposed. Oftentimes, and honestly, acoustic guitars, like, y'all got it easy because y'all have the fucking pins where you just put the string on the pin and like hammer it down. Depending on, or maybe all acoustic guitars aren't like that, but with like a flamenco or like classical guitar, you gotta either like get someone to tie them bitches on there, or you gotta like fucking makeshift tie a knot and just put it like tie a knot so the string doesn't go through the hole at the top near the bridge. If you like if you're like participating like flamenco, like watch people play, you'll notice that like you'll see knots on the top of the bridge, and you'll see this like in Gypsy King videos too, like in the Joby Joba music video. You can see like they have the fucking knots on the top because like it's honestly such a fucking drag to do it the proper way. Uh, Oftentimes, when she remembered the time before the fall formal, all she could recall was anger. Her ambition and her desperation to prove her worth. But perhaps not everything had been quite as dark as it seemed. If only she could have seen it back then. With a sigh, she took out her tuner and made sure all the strings were in tune before playing a single chord. Sounded good enough, almost like it was inviting her to play, but what song? And I gotta say, bro, when you start playing guitar, every fucking motherfucker you know suddenly becomes fucking pitch perfect and over like, oh fuck, tune your shit, dude. Like, fuck, tune your fuck. Like, bro, motherfuckers that never fucking picked up an instrument in their life, never, don't even listen to fucking guitar. They're always like, oh fuck, dude, put your shit in tune. Like, bro, what the fuck? Like, you don't even own a physical. You have never fucking had a guitar in the same physical vicinity as you, but you think you can tell people to fucking tune their shit. That's just fucking annoying as shit. So like, some advice: if you don't fucking play guitar, just don't fucking say anything. If it sounds good to you, it's probably not that. It's probably not all the way in tune, but it doesn't mean that like that's the problem. Like sometimes people just play dissonant like shit. Like come on, just don't tell people how to fucking play. Like she made a few experimental strums, changing chords just to get her hands used to the motions, and she was pleased to find out she still remembered how it was done. Muscle memory, she supposed, but still, most of the songs she learned from Flash were better suited for an electric guitar. She mostly used this one just to practice chords and strumming patterns until she had decided she was ready to move on to the harder stuff. So she strummed slowly. I could low-key like, what song are you trying to play? Let It Rain? What the fuck is that? All I can fucking play is like dissonant shit. Y'all probably fucking heard my song in like the shorts or whatever. You hear the fucking like timbre, like the high tension. You can tell this guitar has like a skinny body. I have a classical guitar too, and the sound is like more spacious, like you can say. I don't ever fucking use this one, so this one might not even be fucking tuned. I hear the fucking difference in the sound. I low-key don't like tune my guitar. I just like, okay, now I sound like fucking horrible for saying that, but I just do like, if they sound good relative to each other, like I don't worry about it. I only tune when like other people are fucking listening. So that's supposed to sound good. Actually, the fucking like first song I learned was like the Malagueñas by like the Michael Lucarelli variation. So like every time I tune my guitar, like since it's like the first song I learned, I just like I know where all the fucking like places my fingers are supposed to be. So I just like measure kind of like the relativity of the sound. Like if it just sounds right relatively, I don't worry about tuning. It's not perfect, but okay. So let's get back to reading. I'm just fucking wasting time. She strummed slowly, slowly trying to recall the song. None of the songs she knew actually seemed to fit her mood. So she just ended up playing whatever felt right until eventually she switched to arpeggios instead of strumming, forming a quiet, melancholic melody. Honestly, what the fuck are arpeggios? Like I've been playing guitar for like 2 years. I just don't know what any of the fucking words mean. Like if it's not flamenco related, like I don't know what the fuck people are talking about. Is arpeggios when you do like, it's like when you do like, it's like when you do like when you like hit one, like arpeggios is like, is that arpeggios or is arpeggios like where you go to the next string after like, are those arpeggios or is arpeggios like, she switched to arpeggios instead of strumming, forming a quiet, melancholic melody. So it was like, maybe not a creepy one. And before she was knowing, she was humming along to the lyrics of this impromptu song. When everything feels like it's just too much. She trailed off, not knowing how to continue, but too caught up in the song to care. So she just kept singing broken lyrics till it felt right. Push through the winter. I don't know. Push through the winter. She switched to strumming, upping the intensity of the song. Let it rain. Let it rain. Let it rain. As she was singing, the memory of the stormy night at Candlelight Castle invaded her mind, and she stopped abruptly, heart thumping. Ugh, of course that stupid dream wouldn't leave her alone. But why? Why now? She was over it, really. No, this kind of sentimental playing wasn't helping. I don't know. I could low-key like read, like react to the when reading with the fucking guitar. That would be interesting to do. No, this sentimental kind of playing wasn't helping. What she needed was a proper riff. Something so difficult her brain wouldn't be able to concentrate on anything else. Low-key facts, like playing guitar is like one of the number one ways just to just not think about shit. Just like do some shit with on the guitar and not think about life. With that in mind, she put away her acoustic guitar, tossing it under the bed, making a tossing guitar sound. That's the sound of the guitar getting tossed under the bed. And then took out the electric one from its bag. It was an orange, big, bulky guitar, far too old-fashioned for Sunset's taste. But she couldn't complain because it was just Flash's old guitar, and he had gotten it from a garage sale for practically nothing. Still, it did its job. She connected it to the mini amp she had also gotten from her ex, and then connected the amp to the power outlet. She played a few notes experimentally, then switched to muted strumming. Yep, still worked as well as she remembered. Groggy notes with distorted edge, product of his age. Still, Sunset thought it gave it some character. Facts, honestly. Like, I don't understand how people like listen to music where it's just auto tune and just like no like texture to the sound, no haunting sound like at all. Just people listen to fucking like pop and that's all I listen to. Like, I don't want to make people angry by saying this, but I don't get people that listen to just like Lana Del Rey or something. Like, there's no like pain in the song. Like, this is just nothing like to grab on for me, honestly. It's just very mechanical sounding to me. But I probably just lost like fucking everybody by saying that. The people like fucking glaze the fuck out of Lana Del Rey. But whatever. She connected it to the mini amp she had also gotten from her ex. Then connected the amp to the power outlet. She played a few... Oh, I already read this part. And so she started playing. First going over all the riffs and solos Flash had taught her. Then going through some she managed to figure out herself. Finally, she started making her own faster and faster, with more and more complicated movement of her fingers, incorporating different ways of picking the strings. Playing electric guitar with your fingers is honestly real. I don't know if that's like a normal thing, because every time I've seen someone play electric guitar, they're always using a pick. And me personally, like, I usually get offended when people used to ask me if, like, where's your pick? Or, like, you got a pick? Like, I used to get offended by that shit, because, like, you call me fucking weak? Like, I got fucking, what's it called? I have fucking, what's it called when you have, like, scars on your, like, hands, but, like, it's not actual scars, but, like, it makes it so you can't feel the pain anymore. I have those, like, all of my fucking fingers, especially on my, like, left hand from bar chords, like, it looks like I can't say that word, but it looks like I inflicted pain upon myself with how like violently for long hours I played. All these scratches on my fucking hand. What was I saying? She was caught up on the music, and she practically had forgotten everything else existed, which was exactly what she wanted. She didn't even care her fingers started hurting. The pain was almost cathartic. Oh my god, facts. Like, why is everything the fucking author is writing right now just fucking facts? Like, her heart was thumping with exhilaration, and her body had started to sweat thanks to the excitement. Then, just as she finished up a particularly hard solo she invented, the door room opened. Sunset stopped playing, startled, and looked up, only to find Celestia at the door. Both bore surprised expression on their faces, but after a hesitant pause, the older woman composed herself. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude, she smiled, a little too brightly for Sunset's taste. I called you for lunch, but you didn't seem to answer, so I got worried. Sunset recoiled a little under her gaze, holding the guitar a little closer to her body. She felt like she'd been caught in an intimate moment. She knew that she hadn't been doing anything wrong or shameful, but she still felt self-conscious and uncomfortable knowing Celestia had seen her like that. Well, she pursed her lips and answered defensively, I'm fine. Celestia didn't respond. She just stood awkwardly at the doorway as if she was waiting for something. At the end, she sighed and took a step back, as if trying to give Sunset some space, but still didn't close the door. I'm sorry I'm talking too much, but I really fuck with the dynamic between like the angsty teenager and like the like adoptive mother. I love this dynamic. Like it's very unique. I feel like it's unexplored in a lot of other like fics and just I guess books in general. Like it's not explored from the teenager's perspective a lot in my opinion. In a way where in a way like for an adult audience, like a young adult audience. It's like when you read books from teenagers' perspective, it's always like it's you can tell it's written for teenagers and not because it doesn't discuss like everything, all the mental health things that can happen when you're a teenager. But in fakes, there's really no limit, so you can just really say anything. Celestia didn't respond. Oh, I already said that. That was amazing, she said earnestly, trying to convey all her admiration through words. You have real talent, Sunset. Sunset shifted uncomfortably, unable to accept the compliment despite her pride. She had long wished to hear praise like this from her voice, but this was wrong. Celestia was the wrong thing to be admired for. Honestly, this is relatable because like, okay, I'm sorry, I'm talking way too fucking much, but like, everything is fucking facts. So like, I used to play guitar. I think did I say this? I started playing guitar like 2 years. I think 2 years ago. Well, no, I really started taking it seriously only like a year and a half ago, and I would be like so fucking pissed off whenever my mom walked in. I was playing. I'd be like, and she like try to like compliment it. I was like, bro, like you just can't. You can't like if you're someone's fucking parent, you just can't. You can't compliment their playing unless you're a musician too. Like compliments from like non-musicians, especially like older people, like in your family, it just doesn't feel right. I don't know what it's about. Like, it doesn't feel real. It feels just like you're gonna say I'm good at it anyway, even if I'm fucking ass. So I'm not gonna listen. Have you ever thought about playing for other people? She continued, unaware of her turmoil. Our school has a music club. Sunset grimaced at the suggestion. Yeah, a music club led by her ex. I play for myself, she ended up saying, instead of everything else she was thinking. Not for others. My music is just for me to hear. She turned off the amp and unplugged her guitar. But even then, as she put it away, she couldn't help recalling a time in which other people did listen to her music, in which Flask asked her to play for his friends so they would believe him when he bragged about teaching her. Uh, Bechik? I don't know what this word is supposed to be. Bechik? Besik? What is Bacik? Is that like a character or something? I don't know what that word's supposed to say, but oh, back when she received compliments and applause at every song. Sorry, it's just like I thought that was like a word. I don't know why. She sighed. How vain. Just another way in which she'd been an arrogant prick. Well, I like it. Celestia spoke hesitantly. I'm sure it'd help people see you differently. Differently. Sunset wanted to scoff. She meant like, not like a monster, didn't she? But she didn't know that Sunset still was a monster, and no amount of guitar playing would suddenly fix that. Even if it could, who would want to listen? Her classmates? No. She could almost see their jeering faces and hear the malicious whispering already. Best case scenario, they'd boo her off the stage. Once the electric guitar had joined the other one under the bed, she turned around and looked at Celestia without saying a word. And one more thing, I'm gonna say one more thing. Owning like a fucking shit ton of different guitars, real. I spent like $200 on guitars, which is not enough money, by the way. Like, just buy a guitar that's like at least $100. I don't know. Because I bought this classical guitar for like $60, and it wasn't functional. I'm sorry. Like, it was too hard to tune the strings. Like the strings would literally just be so fucking hard to tune for no reason. And I had bought this tinier guitar for like $50. Honestly, you should buy a tiny guitar. I have bought like a tiny classical guitar. It's like it'll motivate you just like practice shit more, like more difficult, complicated things. Like I think that's how I learned bar chords on that. Even though it is harder, I think it was harder to do bar chords because it felt like you had to push the strings like way harder down when it was the tiny guitar and get the sound out because like you have to like really fucking try hard to get the sound out. And one more thing, if you're interested in trying like flamenco, and you don't know what type of guitar to buy, I've basically been trying this shit for like a year and a half now. Basically, if you're in America and you don't have access to like a flamenco guitar from Spain, I think the best, depending on what you want to, which one your sound to sound like. If you want like a more classical sound, of course, just buy classical guitar. But if you're more into like the canatero sound, the kind of grainy, like the grainy canatero down to earth, like 90s era flamenco with Tomatito and Cameron, like that kind of flamenco. I recommend buying an acoustic guitar and just putting high tension 2001 La Bella flamenco strings on that. You'll get the grainy sound and you'll get the attack and the action is low like a flamenco guitar. It's basically everything the flamenco guitar does, but the only difference is the strings are closer together because of course it's a acoustic and not like a classical. So if you can't afford like a fucking $3,600 flamenco guitar and you're an American, you can't fucking like access that shit. Just buy an acoustic, like I said. Yeah. What was I saying? She realized her eyes seemed a bit sad, perhaps even disappointed. But she pushed past her and started heading downstairs, not bothering to check if the adult followed. She wouldn't understand. Music was one of the few things she just enjoyed for what it was. Tainting it by using it as a ticket for validation just didn't seem right. And besides, she doubted it'd work anyway. A demon who played music was still a demon. Sunset woke up in the middle of the night again, not from a nightmare or from how painfully familiar her room was, but because she decided to put her phone to good use and set up an alarm. Exactly midnight. Perfect. She got up from bed, but didn't grab her stuff this time. She wasn't running away, she was on a quest for answers. Sunset's muffled footsteps barely made a sound as she walked downstairs, and when she arrived at the moonlit living room, she wasn't surprised when the smell of the coffee hit her, and a familiar figure looked at her from the couch. "You're awake," Luna said, her voice calm, almost teasing, but carrying a weight that made Sunset pause. "So are you," Sunset replied, her tone sharper than she intended. She hesitated, her gaze flickering to the couch where she slept the previous night. "But better get this over with. Did you, she tried to swallow her nervousness. Did you put the blanket on me last night?" Sunset set the mug down with a gentle clink. The sound breaking the heavy silence. Her eyes, reflective in the moonlight, didn't move from Sunset. "Sometimes the hand that offers comfort isn't as important as the comfort itself, don't you think?" Her jaw tightened. "It does if the one giving comfort is expecting something in return." "And what do you think I expect?" The woman's lips twitched in a faint, almost imperceptible smile, though she remained unaffected otherwise. Sunset shifted uncomfortably, unable to answer that question. Her gaze dropped to the ground. I don't know," she admitted at last. "But if it had been Celestia." The girl trailed off. She could feel the weight of Celestia's expectations of her demands, even without voicing them. "Would you feel different?" Luna tilted her head, studying her with an unflinching gaze for a long moment. Yes. Sunset swallowed hard. Her voice dropped to a whisper, barely above the crickets singing outside. She would have put it there deliberately, to nudge me towards accepting her help as a part of some elaborate plan. The moment those words escaped her mouth, she bit her tongue, wishing she could take them back. Not because she thought they were too harsh, or because they weren't true, but because she feared Luna wouldn't take kindly to the insinuation. The room fell into silence, thick and slow, broken only by the faint chirping of crickets somewhere in the distance. Luna's gaze remained on Sunset, patient and unyielding, yet devoid of judgment. After a long while, she leaned back slightly, her voice calm yet firm. Perhaps my sister and I aren't as different as you think." Okay, I'm like thirsty as shit right now. I'm about to take it. Bro, I gotta say this before I forget, bro. Popeyes, they need to get in their shit, bro. Y'all cannot be having the fucking metal inside the fucking package and not have a fucking warning on this bitch or anything. I put this bitch in the microwave. This bitch started exploding the first 2 seconds. It smells like fucking burnt ass paper now. Like, come on, bro. Like, at least put a warning. Like not everyone's gonna remember that there's fucking metal inside the bag. Well, so there is a warning, but like this bitch is small as fuck, and it's just orange like everything else on the. Like at least make the warning like red or something and make it bigger. Like, come on, bro. Like, they almost blew my ass up. Like, this shit was serious. Just put a fucking warning, please. Like, but perhaps my sister and I aren't as different as you think. Sunset stiffened, unsettled by her words. Had she read her wrong? Was Luna the one with the elaborate plan all along? Or did she mean her sister wasn't the scheming mastermind Sunset saw her as? Either possibility seemed equally impossible for Sunset to accept. Luna gently patted the couch next to her, and Sunset sat down reluctantly, but decided it'd be more comfortable than remaining standing if she wanted to continue this conversation. And she did. She came for answers, and she wasn't leaving until she got them. After calmly sipping another cup of coffee, the youngest of the two sisters finally addressed her again. You know what I like about the night? Luna asked rather casually. That sometimes it can help us see the world from a different perspective. You know, I'm gonna reread that part, so like I can make like a fucking banger ass short with like music in the background, because I think the Luna parts are like very cinematic and pulling in. Luna gently patted the couch next to her, and Sunset sat down reluctantly. Start over. Luna gently patted the couch next to her, and Sunset sat down reluctantly, but deciding it'd be more comfortable than remaining standing if she wanted to continue this conversation. And she did. She came for answers, and she wasn't leaving until she got them. After calmly taking another sip of coffee, the younger of the two sisters finally addressed her again. You know what I like about the night? Luna asked, rather casually. That sometimes it can help us see the different. Fuck, bro. Should I just keep going? You know what? I'll give up. You know what I like about the night? Luna asked. And I'm gonna just start after calmly taking another sip of coffee. After calmly taking another sip of coffee, the youngest of the two sisters finally addressed her again. You know what I like about the night? Luna asked, rather casually. That sometimes it can help us see the world from a different perspective. Sunset frowned, trying to understand what she meant. Like how when distant shadows seem like monsters and even in an empty hallway can appear menacing? No, Luna shook her head. I meant like how it transforms a bustling city into a serene environment, a distant valley into the best astronomical observatory. Oh, the syllable escaped Sunset's mouth, quiet and perplexed. Truthfully, her mind hadn't even considered those possibilities. The way we interpret things largely depends on our past experiences, Luna continued, her eyes landing on Sunset, but her posture remaining relaxed and casual. For someone who's to being in constant fuck, dude. Damn, I really wanted to have this whole part perfect. For someone who's used to being in constant alert, searching for danger, a shadowy hallway feels as oppressive as deceptive, and deceptive as a looming labyrinth. The girl pressed her lips. She knew where Luna was going with this, but if she spoke, it'd be like telling on herself, so she remained silent. The adult didn't seem to mind. I speak from experience, Luna continued quietly. Words left unsaid, wounds unacknowledged. I speak from experience, Luna continued quietly. Words left unsaid, wounds unacknowledged. They don't vanish, they linger, shaping your fears, reshaping our nights. Sunset wanted to scoff, to dismiss her words, but what came out of her mouth was a quiet hum. Memories of Equestria crept in her mind, unsettling and painful. Of course, using the cover of darkness to study what Celestia didn't want her to know, of the pit in her stomach whenever she saw a distant shadow and imagined to be the princess, and of how her worst fears had come true, leading to her eventual exile. She wished she could argue, say the past was in the past, but the words got caught in her throat. Suddenly she realized that, even when physically safe, Inside a proper house in a nice neighborhood, the oppressive weight of darkness remained, looming just above her head. Luna's gaze remained patient, unwavering. If you ever decide to confront what has been left behind, I assure you, it won't be a sign of weakness, only an act of understanding yourself. She smiled. Sorry, I had to burp. Sometimes the biggest monster can become a simple tree when morning comes, after all. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry being annoying this recording, but I really want to get this part perfect. I'm gonna reread this part. Luna's gaze remained patient, unwavering. If you ever decide to confront what is left, okay, let me concentrate. Luna's gaze remained patient, unwavering. If you ever decide, okay, let me do this one more time. Luna's gaze remained patient, unwavering. If you ever decide to confront what has been left behind, I assure you, it won't be a sign of weakness, only an act of understanding yourself. She smiled. Sometimes the biggest monster can become a simple tree when morning comes, after all. But finally, Sunset's voice managed to say out a word, quiet and raspy as it was. What if it isn't? She clenched her fist. What if the sun comes out and you discover that the monster was real all along? Then at least you'll know what a monster looks like, she replied, pragmatic and straight to the point. And that knowledge will prevent you from lashing out at every shadow just because you don't know what it is. Sunset sighed, closing her eyes and reclining back on the couch, letting it soothe her tense shoulders. The silence remained, letting the conversation sink in. She understood the metaphor, of course. She had to confront her past if she wished for a chance to accept her president. Good or bad, it was obvious that it was still shaping her decisions and clouding her judgment, especially when it came to Celestia. Truthfully, the way the two Celestias so seamlessly mixed together in her mind was rather unsettling. Something as small as the type of tea she drank, or the way her lips curled to a smile, could transport Sunset to the past so easily. It was as terrifying as it was inviting, and she hated herself for thinking that it was inviting at all. She opened her eyes and looked at the youngest of the sisters, the safe one, the one who didn't remind her of anything and only existed in her present. What should I do then? She asked directly. Luna didn't respond immediately, instead taking her time swirling her coffee around her mug as she contemplated her answer. I don't know, she answered sincerely, turning to look at Sunset with a serene smile on her face. Each person's path is different, but I can tell you what worked for me. The girl nodded, encouraging. Well, Luna looked away, taking a deep breath and hesitating for a moment before speaking up. I just know that I would have never gathered the courage to reconcile with my sister had I burned all her letters, like I originally intended. Her note was calm, steady, but there was a quiet weight behind it. Sunset's eyes widened at the rather personal confession, and she sat a little straighter, taking in the information with both curiosity and understanding. Sometimes we hold on to things from our past without knowing why. We fear them, and the pain they can bring to us. The smile returned to Luna's face as she spoke. But sometimes they end up bringing us hope and warmth instead. She looked pointedly at Sunset. Even if they don't, at the very least they can bring us closure. The girl looked away, trying not to think about what she was thinking, but it was too late. The image had been seared in her mind, as clear as if she was seeing it in front of her. A book. A leather bound and adorned with a flaming sun. A book which had been abandoned in a dusty box to be forgotten. A book whose entries had remained unread for years. How ridiculous it was for her to even consider it, to even hope that whatever Celestia had written in it weren't just painful reprimands or gentle admonishments or worse. Nothing. And yet, the seed had been planted, and its roots soon started to take hold of her entire mind. The book sat there like a shadow in her memory. But was it a monster? Or just a tree she was too afraid to look at? That's the end of chapter 9. The note says, I hope you like this one as much as I enjoyed writing it. As you can see, the pieces are already coming into place for the events of Rainbow Rocks, but we still have some things to get through. Wow. Oh yeah, of course this is before Rainbow Rocks. It's kind of like crazy to write a fic about something that happened between the events in a story, because when you first like experience the story, obviously you have this impression that like nothing really important happened in between the two events because the writers just skipped that part. But seeing this very long narrative, like this is a very long fic. This is like twice as long as the Yanfei one or the Yantao one. Like halfway through is already I'm reiterating the math here, but halfway through this one is like the full Yantao one. And these chapters are long as shit. I'm not gonna lie to you. It took me 50 minutes to read this one chapter. That's crazy. I mean, yeah, because I'm talking out loud, but it takes me an hour to read one chapter, which is good because that's a very good skill to have as a writer, to not like add fluff to your work, but to have enough so that people feel satiated each time you update. And this person seems to be updating weekly, which is respectable. What else? I kind of want to leave a comment, but in order to leave a comment, I had to like scroll all the way to the fucking bottom of the page. And I don't feel like signing into my account. I don't know if you guys know this, but you guys probably know this if you're in the like fan fiction diaspora, I guess, community. Like you make an AO3 account, that shit takes like a fucking month to verify or whatever. Because like I guess the archive has so much shit in it that like they have to manually like review all this shit. So you like put in the fucking long ass queue. And I don't remember how long it took me to make my account, but I made it like years ago. I think I made it when I was like a sophomore or like a freshman in high school or something. I don't remember. But yeah, that's that chapter. I'm probably gonna continue reading like tomorrow or something. It's like 12 a.m. Hello. I'm back. But it's probably gonna be the same video. But I have something to say. Bro, what the fuck is up with fucking men, bro? Like, when you got a fucking female audience, you don't get fucking comments, bullshit ass comments. Like, you just fucking like the shit, save the shit, and move on with the fucking day. But when you have a fucking male audience, the first fucking second male audience, they want to fucking comment on your shit, be like, oh, this is blah, blah, you're wrong, blah, blah, blah. Like, bro, first of all, it's a fucking joke. Second of all, being wrong is part of the fucking, like, idea. Like, that's the point. That's why it's fucking engagement bait, because it's fucking wrong. Like, obviously, the shit's not gonna fucking happen. It's a joke, obviously. Like, it's fucking wrong, obviously. But anyway, let's just continue. And it's always just one motherfucker, like, that just thinks that it's fucking right. Like, obviously you're fucking right because it's a fucking joke. Being wrong is part of the fucking joke. Okay, but chapter 10, flawed loyalty and selfish generosity. When the alarm started blasting out its cursed song on Monday, Sunset groaned and covered her ears with her pillow. She really didn't want to go to school. I already have to fucking... Excuse me. Hope no one heard that. It was because she hadn't finished her homework. She spent the entirety of the previous day working on it. Not because she actually cared, but because it was a good excuse to lock herself up and not have to interact with Celestia at all. No, the reason she didn't want to go to the school was, well, several reasons actually, but mainly Rainbow Dash and her stupid friends. That brash girl had seen her demon form, had been chased by it, cornered and almost injured. It didn't really matter that Sunset had stopped herself. The damage was done. If she had told her friends and Sunset saw a little reason for why she wouldn't, then surely they would all be too scared of Sunset to approach her now, wouldn't they? Who cares? Isn't that what you wanted? The dark voice inside her head spoke, and Sunset simply curled herself further in bed, trying to ignore it. Monsters don't make friends, remember? No, they don't. She responded to no one, her voice barely audible over the sound of the alarm still ringing. They don't. Those words echoed in her head as she finally decided to sit up, snatch her phone from the nightstand and turn off the alarm. They followed her as she changed her usual clothes, brushed her hair, and went to the bathroom. As she finished her morning routine and stared at her bruised face in the mirror, she couldn't help the pang of pain that tugged on her chest. But it had nothing to do with her injuries. The girls, they would either treat her like a monster she was, or they'd pity her. Her claws flashed out at the thought, and she had to back away in order not to damage the sink. Being pitied was even worse than being shunned. Still, a part of her deep inside couldn't help hoping that they treat her normally, that Rainbow hadn't said anything, that all would be just like it was on last Friday, when she was able to talk to them in the cafeteria like a normal person. She sighed, turning away from the mirror, and exited the bathroom. That possibility was gone. She had made sure of that. After grabbing her backpack and hurrying to the front of the door, she came to face with Celestia, of course. She knew she'd be driving her to school after all. This place wasn't in walking distance like the old abandoned building she'd used as shelter before. Still, her mood soured even upon seeing her. Good morning. The woman greeted her with a warm smile. Are you ready to go? Where's Luna? The words blurted out of her mouth before she could stop herself. Why? She wasn't sure, but somehow the prospect of driving to school with both sisters felt less oppressive than doing so with just Celestia. She went ahead already. Celestia explained as she went to open the main door. Sunset reluctantly followed. Usually we both arrive before classes start, but we didn't want to make you wait in our office for a full hour, so we decided to take turns driving you to school instead. And of course Celestia would take the first turn, Sunset thought sourly as she got into the car. To her surprise, however, the woman didn't turn on the engine immediately, but instead reached into her purse and pulled out a lunchbox out of it. That sentence threw me off. It seemed to have pancakes inside. Of course it did. Some things never change. She handed it to Sunset. It's for breakfast, she explained. The girl hesitated, but eventually took it. She was in no position to decline food, she reasoned. Not when she starved herself for so long. She tried not to think about Celestia's pleased smile as she put the lunchbox inside her backpack. Thanks, she said in a small voice, staring right ahead as the car turned on and started moving down the street. That morning was cold and gray and barely morning, really. The streets looked as serene and dark as if it were night. The sight somehow made Sunset's inner turmoil diminish slightly. And then Celestia ruined it. Are you really going to wear that to school? She asked, briefly glancing at Sunset's jacket. It's so torn and dirty. I think I have a cardigan in the back that you can use if... Stop. Sunset cut her off firmly, crossing her arms over her chest. I don't want your stupid cardigan. There was a sharp inhale and a hesitant pause, and for a moment Sunset thought Celestia had finally understood, but of course that would have been too good to be true. I'm just saying that. To her credit, Celestia's voice was unsure and softer than before. Well, the way people perceive us has to do, not only with who we are as people or even what we do, but how we look. She paused, looking at Sunset. And do you really want your classmates to see you like this? Someone outside the fucking door. Alright, I was gonna wait until the people in the hall left, but it's been like 2 hours, so I don't think they're gonna leave. So, I low-key read a little bit farther. Where was I? And you really want your classmates to see you like this? Celestia didn't have to say it outright for Sunset to know what she meant. Wearing a torn jacket meant she couldn't afford a new one. People would see her as poor and look down on her because that's just how it was, both here in Equestria. She knew that, and she hated it. But she'd rather have people think she was broke, and she was anyway, than having them see her wearing one of Celestia's oversized cardigans. Loki had to look up what the fuck a cardigan was. Like, I don't know what clothes are called. And I literally looked it up, and I'm like, I see the fucking cardigan. I'm like, I wore this bitch before. How do I not know what this shit's called? Like, she couldn't help missing the time when she was a pony and didn't have to wear clothes at all. Why were humans so complicated? I understand that my clothes aren't really your style. Celestia spoke again, even though Sunset hadn't spoken her thoughts out loud. They were probably written all over her face. But perhaps after school I could take you to the mall and you can choose something? She asked tentatively. A new leather jacket, at least? Sunset paused. The idea of using Celestia as a living wallet was tempting, but going with her to the freaking mall of all places sounded like a recipe for disaster. That woman seemed intent on showering her with gifts and attention at any opportunity she could get, and she really, really didn't want to be more indebted to her than she already was. Thanks, I'll pass, she answered sourly. Celestia opened her mouth to speak, but Sunset quickly interrupted her before she could start. You asked me to tell you I mean, you asked me to tell you when you were crossing a line, right? Well, you are, so stop. To her relief, Celestia closed her mouth and pursed her lips. Understood. She muttered and kept staring ahead in silence for the rest of the drive. Sunset couldn't help but being relieved at this development. But as she stared at the frayed edge of her sleeve, suddenly unsure, she also felt a little guilty. When Sunset opened her locker to get out her stuff, she tried not to think of the cardboard box, dusty and stuffed at the bottom of it, and the book it contained. But of course, when you try not to think about something, that's all you think about. Luna's words echoed inside her head. Words left unsaid, ones unacknowledged. They do not vanish, they linger, shaping our fears, reshaping our nights. Of course, she knew she'd have to face her past sooner or later. That book couldn't stay in the box forever, whether she opened it or not, but was she actually going to read? Was she actually ready for what she might find? She didn't think so. Her pulse quickened, her palms sweated, and her breath picked up. But still, she bent down and opened the box. This look reminds me of something, but I can't remember what. I've had this fucking feeling before where, like, I haven't, like, looked at something for years or something, and then, it's probably not important. But you guys probably can relate to that. Of course, she knew she had to face her past sooner. Oh, I already read this. There it was, unassuming, silent, like a normal book. Still, Sunset knew that this didn't mean anything. If you were to ignore it for long enough after just receiving a message, it stopped glowing and vibrating. Then again, did it work between dimensions? She wasn't completely sure of that. For a moment, she was tempted to open it. Her fingers brushed the cover, touching the sun emblem tentatively. But what if it had no new messages? Would it be because Celeste didn't care enough to write, or because it didn't work when the other book was in a different world? Or what if there were new messages, and then what? What would she say? What would she do? Hey, Shimmer! A voice to the right. Sorry, I was trying to find out who the fuck said that. A voice to the right startled her, making her let out a rather undignified yelp and let go of the book, which landed on the ground with a loud thud. Then she looked at the culprit and her stomach dropped. Rainbow Dash. Of course it was Rainbow Dash. Could her day get any worse? Oops, sorry, didn't mean to startle you. The girl shot her an apologetic smile while nervously rubbing the back of her neck. I'm just glad to see you here, after what happened. She trailed off ashamed. She didn't have to say anything, but her eyes lingered on Sunset's bruised cheek a little too long. The redhead didn't answer and instead just picked up her book and held it close to her chest defensively. Rainbow seemed more amicable than usual, and she didn't trust it. What was she up to this time? What do you want, Rainbow Dash? She spoke firmly, tensing up. Whoa, hey, I just want to check up on you. She put up her hands in surrender, but when Sunset's expression didn't change, she deflated slightly. I know I'm probably the last person you want to see right now, she admitted in a small voice. And I get it, I was a jerk, okay? But I just want to say I'm sorry and, can we start over, please? Upon seeing this sincere, apologetic look on the other girl's face, Sunset faltered. Was she serious? Rainbow Dash was apologizing to her? She hadn't been the one who turned into a raging demon set on vengeance. But then again, Rainbow had hit her with a soccer ball and hurt her. She supposed it made sense she felt bad about it, right? Can we? Sunset spoke at last, her voice more tired than cutting. Starting over would be the best outcome for both of them, but Rainbow had seen her demon form. Could she ever look at her as something other than a monster? I mean, I'm willing to try. She put her hands inside her pockets and shrugged, giving Sunset a tentative smile. I used to think that what you did as a bully was unforgivable, but I screw up all the time. You saw that, and I don't know, maybe people like us, we just need a second shot? Sunset sighed, looking at Rainbow's eyes. She seemed sincere, her speech sounded logical enough for her, but it was too good to be true. Listen, I understand if you hate me now. The girl spoke again, her voice cracking with underlying vulnerability that was rare to hear on her. I just want to try. I think we could actually be great friends. Friends? The word was out of her mouth before she could stop herself. Unbelieving, tentative, but hopeful. Rainbow nodded. Yeah, if you want. She looked away. I know I can't be a lot to deal with. I know I can be a lot to deal with sometimes, but just like you, I'm trying to be better. She let out a nervous sigh, finally looking back at her. And what better way than to start over, right? Sunset stared at her for a long moment, thinking about how much she hated the girl before. She was so competitive, impulsive, rash, arrogant, loud. But then again, she was also Sunset. But then again, she was Sunset, wasn't she? Maybe she never hated Rainbow at all, not really. Perhaps she just hated the mirror she held up to her. But now in that mirror, Sunset could see something else. The same drive to be better than yesterday. The same need to prove she wasn't defined by her worst mistakes. And suddenly, Sunset felt like she was actually standing on equal footing with someone. It doesn't have to be friends. Rainbow amended when Sunset didn't answer. We can be, I don't know, pals, partner in crime, compadres. She chuckled awkwardly, trying to alleviate the tension. What do you say? She extended her hand tentatively for Sunset to shake. Her fingers twitched. What if she accepted it but Rainbow pulled away at the last second? What if later she'd laugh about this moment with her real friends? What if this was all a cruel prank, a way to get back at her? But Sunset wasn't flinching, she wasn't backing up. She had seen Sunset's claws, her teeth, her rage, and she was still there. Still offering her hand, still smiling. Awkward, tentative, but there. Monsters don't make friends. The sinister voice inside Sunset's head reminded her, but somehow this time the words didn't seem to reach her. She heard them, but her heart didn't ache like it was supposed to. Sunset's arm lifted up before she realized what it was doing. It trembled, her palm damp, her breath caught in her throat. For a split second, she half expected claws to sprout out her fingers, but no. Just her own hand, her normal human hand, reached out for Rainbow's. When their palms met, Sunset's breath hissed from the flood of warmth that spread through her chest. It wasn't magic, not really. It was heavier, stranger, foreign, but just as exhilarating. Just friends is fine, she managed, voice tight but steady. Rainbow's grin widened, bright and unafraid, and Sunset found herself mustering a smile of her own, fragile, uncertain, but hers. Because by some miracle, someone had come face to face with her darkest side. It hadn't pulled away. Friends it is! Rainbow's grip was firm and grounding. She shook her hand with all the energy she carried into everything, like she really meant it, and maybe she did. Sunset nodded almost in a daze. Yeah, it struck her then. This wasn't about some premise made to a princess, and it wasn't like the polite kindness from people who always seemed to be too good to be real either. This was raw, flawed, and messy. Rainbow had hated her, hurt her, seen her at her absolute worst, and still wanted this. That made it real in a way that Sunset could believe. Demons weren't forgiven by perfect people, but maybe, just maybe, they could be accepted by someone who is just as unperfect as them. Monsters didn't make friends, but that didn't change the fact that, against all odds and for the first time in her life, Sunset Shimmer had a friend. So, you coming to class? Rainbow asked tentatively, but when the silence stretched too long. She nodded, sure. Then she closed her locker and tucked the book inside her backpack, trying not to think about it. Next, she turned around and walked next to someone on her way to the hallway, like friends do. Oh, and by the way, Rainbow spoke for a moment. I didn't tell my friends about, the demon thing. She whispered the last part, but Sunset still caught it. You didn't? Her eyes widened with disbelief. She couldn't have imagined a scenario like this ever being real. No. Rainbow shook her head, and then Sunset gave a reassuring smile. Your secret is safe with me, I promise. For a moment she faltered. Trust had never come easily for her, but she found herself nodding anyway, because somehow she believed Rainbow actually meant it. And after all, if someone could stare down a raging monster and still reach out a hand in friendship, what clearer proof of loyalty could there be? By the time lunch break came around, Sunset wasn't nearly as scared as she thought she'd be. Not only had Rainbow's reassurances had been enough to stop her anxiety, but the girls' wavings and hellos as they crossed each other in the hallways had been enough for Sunset to accept that the fragile normalcy they'd been building up hadn't been shattered by what happened on Friday. As such, when she sat, when she, oh fuck, when as such when she went to sit with them at the cafeteria, it felt natural, like she'd been doing it all her life. Pinky's loud voice had Pinky's loud voice. Fuck, dude. Pinky's loud voice as she offered her yet another baked pastry wasn't as obnoxious, and Rainbow's teasing about Sunset being a nerd actually felt lighthearted. Bro, I know like I'm fucking guilty of this shit too, but like fanfiction writers write the fucking longest ass sentences of all time, and I know I used to do this shit too, cause like I don't know, just something about the English language, like something about reading a lot and like being obsessed with English grammar. You just write long ass sentences. It's just to do it, just because you know you can do it, just because you know you can put the fucking comma in the right place and do it right. So you write the fucking longest ass sentences you can possibly imagine. So yeah, for the first time, being in this group of friends, hearing their laughter and their conversation didn't feel isolating. Can I say one more thing? Does anyone have this thing, like this grammar thing, where I guess like if you take like a second language class or something, your brain just breaks down every sentence grammatically just for fucking no reason. Like you can't even control this shit. Like your brain's like, oh, this is a list, and the last comma before the and isn't fuck. Like you know what I mean? Like is your brain just like fucking breaking this shit down? You don't even need to know all this shit. Okay, I'm just keeping reading. For the first time, being in this group of friends, hearing their laughter and their conversation didn't feel isolating. She wasn't the odd one out anymore. She wasn't the charity case. She was just Sunset, and maybe, just maybe, she was glad to be there. Her thoughts were interrupted, however, by Applejack's loud voice. What in a blazing saddles are you wearing? She exclaimed. For a moment, Sunset feared she was talking about her and her ragged jacket, but then she noticed that her comment was directed at Rarity of all people. Rarity, the epitome of class and style. The girl who never had hair out of place or a wrinkle in her clothes. The girl who always picked her outfits with utmost care, from the colors to the shapes and even the fabrics. Sunset had never seen her wear something that didn't look like it was tailor-made for her. And yet there she was, Rarity arriving at their table wearing a leather jacket over her usual outfit. It wasn't just the fact that leather felt like too harsh of a choice for her usual princess-like appearance. Sunset was sure that the girl would have been able to pull it off if she'd picked a more fitting outfit. No, it was the fact that each sleeve sported an orange arrow-like ornament that clashed with Rarity's blues and purples in a bad way. Not only that, but the jacket was a bit too long for her. The shoulders too wide and the sleeves too long. This is what I've been working on for the past week. Rarity answered proudly, like she was completely oblivious to the girl's confused stares, showing off the jacket like she was in a photo shoot. I'll admit, leather isn't really something I've worked with before, but it was a nice challenge and I like the end result. What do you think? Her gaze shifted across the table, landing on each of the girls, who looked away in response, except for Pinkie Pie. I think it's perfect, she exclaimed enthusiastically. Even better than I thought it would be. Well, thank you, darling. Thank you, darling. I keep accidentally like switching to a fucking Australian accent. She accepted the compliment and then turned again to look at the others. What about the rest of you? I'd like to hear your opinions. Well, surprisingly, Fluttershy was the first to speak up, although nervously. I'm not the biggest fan, but if you like it, then I like it too. Rarity frowned slightly contemplative. What about you, Applejack? Hey, no. The girl protested, backing up with her chair like she wanted to flee. I know how this is. There's no right answer with you. If I say it looks bad, you'll get angry, and if I say it looks good, you'll say I'm not being honest. So it looks bad then, Rarity inferred, raising an eyebrow. I didn't say that. She shifted nervously under her friend's gaze. Rarity clicked her tongue, putting her hands on her hips before turning to the last girl. Rainbow? The girl tensed up like a deer in headlights and stumbled out an answer. Well, I mean, I don't know much about clothes, but like, she grimaced, looking at the Rarity up and down. It's not awesome. I see, she sighed, and finally her eyes landed on Sunset. Up until that point, she had believed she was free from this exchange, a silent observer, just taking it all in, but no, of course not. Sunset, darling, what do you think? Sunset took a deep breath, debating whether to tell her the truth or not. On one hand, lying would be more diplomatic. She didn't want to sound like her mean self after all, and criticizing another girl's outfit was a good way to end up being a jerk. On the other hand, given the other girl's answers, she'd be caught in the lie pretty quickly if she tried to compliment Rarity. She decided for a neutral approach. I like the jacket, she said sincerely, but it's not really your style. Really? Really? Rarity's eyes widened almost theatrically, like she hadn't considered it before. Then she looked down her own outfit. Perhaps you're right. I think it's not my usual style, but I felt inspired by someone else. She admitted as she looked up again. Perhaps I should give it to someone who could more easily pull off this rebel style, this rebel vibe. Sunset looked at her old, dirty leather jacket and then at Rarity's shiny new one. For a moment, she wished the girl would offer it to her. She wanted it. It was perfect. The smooth, dark color of the fabric, the metallic zippers, the orange ornaments that would complement her hair wonderfully. Perhaps her only criticism was that it lacked spikes, but it worked for her reformed image, I suppose, she supposed. She could almost imagine herself wearing it, feel the soft fabric and the warmth in her skin, but no, her pride wouldn't let her accept a hand-me-down jacket, even if it was brand new. She quickly shut down the idea. Rarity looked around her friend group as if waiting for volunteers, and Rainbow sighed. Thanks, Rare. Fuck. Thanks, Rare. I know I use a motorcycle, but leather isn't really my thing. Oh, I didn't mean you so specifically, darling, the fashionista corrected. But I'm sure I'll find someone better suited for it, someone taller. Hey! Rainbow protested, but was ignored by Rarity, whose eyes purposely landed on Sunset, and she finally realized what Rarity was doing. Of course, it all made sense now. I'm gonna say this author's like extremely verbose. Like, they know how to like fucking write a long ass scene. Maybe it's because I'm reading it out loud. Maybe that's why I feel this way. Of course, it all makes sense now. How she'd asked to borrow Sunset's jacket that previous week and studied it with a lot of detail. Why the colors of this new jacket purposely clashed with Rarity's. Why she hadn't picked a more fitting outfit to wear it with. She wanted this outcome. She wanted them to tell her it didn't suit her because it was never meant for her in the first place. Sunset's fists clenched. She wanted the jacket. She did. She had wanted a new jacket since the incident at the fall formal left her old one near unusable. She hated having to dress with rags all the time since this new jacket was literally made for her. But she hated it. She hated charity. She hated pity. She hated it when people assumed they knew what was best for her. And she hated when they were right. Without another word, she stood up, swung her backpack by her shoulder, and stormed out of the cafeteria. Again, not bothering to look back. She had only made a few steps down the hallway, however, when she heard Rarity's voice and the distinct sounds of her heels clicking against the tiled floor behind her. Sunset, darling, wait! Sunset picked up her pace in response, but unfortunately for her, she didn't make it far before her hand was caught by another one's grasp. Wait! Sunset spun around, freeing herself, glaring at Rarity. Leave me alone, she snarled. The girl sighed, disappointed. You know, if you don't want the jacket, you can just say so. No need for storming out like this. Sunset's eyes narrowed. Right. She clenched her fists and felt her claws piercing her skin again, reopening her wounds, but she didn't care. You were clearly pushing it towards me. I'm going to interrupt for a small comment. So this is going to be like a thing where every character of like the main, is it 5 or 6? Like every character of them like experiences the demon thing but doesn't tell the others. And that's kind of like narratively like the pattern, and then in the end everyone's going to be like, oh, we all experienced it but we didn't say anything. Is that what's going to happen here? Because I thought it would fit you best, that's all, she answered defensively. Because you made it for me. The moment the accusation left Sunset's mouth, she realized how ridiculous it sounded. Despite it having been so logical in her mind just a moment earlier, Rarity had made a jacket for her? Please. How egocentric could she be to think that? The silence that followed felt like silent judgment, even if Rarity's expression remained just slightly pained. I can always give it to someone else, she shrugged, like it wasn't a big deal, not denying it, nor confirming the accusation. I'd never even dream of forcing someone to wear clothes they didn't think would suit them. Sunset opened her mouth to retort, but then faltered. The jacket would suit her, she knew that much. Saying otherwise would be a blatant lie, and somehow, the thought of Rarity giving it to someone else, someone who didn't need it, someone who wouldn't look as good in it, somehow stung more than the idea of accepting it herself. Still, at the sole thought of asking for the jacket, her fangs flared up and pierced her tongue. The metallic taste reminded her that she didn't deserve it, and accepting it was not an option. All right, listen. Verity spoke up after Sunset simply remained silent. I did make it with you in mind, she confessed. But it's not a big deal if you don't want it, all right? I'm not trying to force anything on you. Why? The words came out of Sunset's mouth through gritted teeth. Why? Verity repeated, surprised by the question. Why did you make it for me? She clarified, tense. We've only been on speaking terms for a week. Because Verity sighed and looked away, expression downcast. Because I'm selfish. Sunset blinked in surprise. That wasn't the response she expected at all. I've wanted to make something for you even back when you were a horrible person. She kept going, not bothering to sugarcoat her words. You have such a unique style, such vibrant hair colors, and a tall, athletic body. An amused smile appeared on Rarity's lips as she finally looked up to Sunset's eyes again. You didn't hold the title of school's hottest chick for 2 consecutive years for nothing, she paused, trying to put weight on her next words. But I saw something else in you, a potential for more, for beauty, true beauty. Her face turned sad. Oh, true beauty ready to shine through like an uncut gem. The smile on her face turned sad. I wanted to be the one to help you shine, but I failed to realize that this gem didn't want to be cut. I'm sorry. Sunset blinked again, her face relaxing slightly and her breath slowly returning to normal. She found that she could actually empathize with Rarity's motives even if she couldn't understand them completely. She knew what it felt like to chase ambition so hard, you forgot about others along the way, and she supposed Rarity must have felt the same way about fashion. But most importantly, Sunset finally understood that this wasn't pity at all. It never been about pity, it wasn't even about her. Generous as it was, Rarity's gesture was selfish at its core. But and somewhat made it and somewhat that made it better, not worse. Well, I better go get back. Rarity chuckled awkwardly, looking at the ground. I didn't finish my lunch. Right. Sunset forced herself to nod, trying not to think about the tense, awkward air between them. To her surprise, however, Rarity then proceeded to take off the jacket and didn't hand it to her. Instead, she put it on top of a nearby trash can, carefully, deliberately, like it was a fine coat rack. Instead, what are you doing? Sunset furrowed her eyebrows. For some reason, seeing Rarity put something she spent so much time and effort working on in the trash felt like a gut punch. She made her do this. She had forced her to throw away something beautiful. Rarity simply shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant, but with an air of sadness in her expression. Perhaps someone else would pick it up, she simply said before walking away towards the cafeteria without looking back. Only once the cafeteria doors closed behind her did Sunset dare to glance at the jacket. It was still there, still perfect, still inviting. If she walked away now, she'd never stop thinking about it, but if she reached out, what then? With a sharp inhale, she extended her hand. The leather was smooth beneath her fingertips, soft and firm all at once. She grabbed it decidedly and brought it closer to her, smelling the distinct aroma that came with this type of clothing. It felt like being reunited with an old friend you didn't even know you had. Familiar, nostalgic, but new at the same time. She hugged it a little closer, smiling despite herself. She wouldn't accept Rarity's charity or pity, but surprisingly, she could accept her selfish gift. The bell rang, and the hum of chatter filled the hall as the students shuffled into the auditorium for the weekly assembly. Sunset stepped in hesitantly, straightening up her new jacket and looking around for a free spot to sit. She wouldn't get the opportunity to decide, however, because a moment later, someone grabbed her arm and dragged her down one of the aisles to sit with her group of friends. A glance confirmed her kidnapper was none other than Pinkie Pie. Here, Sonny. The girl sat down and patted the seat next to her rather enthusiastically. Sunset simply sighed and complied, figuring it was easier than to put up resistance. A moment later, Rarity sat to her left, a pleased smile on her face. It really suits you. Rarity spoke calmly, but with a sly grin nonetheless. Sunset simply rolled her eyes, not wanting to make a big deal out of it. I know, right? Pinkie interfered. It's almost like it was made for her. She winked at Rarity, but the girl looked just as baffled as Sunset felt in that moment. So Pinkie had just known? That must have been why she called it perfect from the start. Sunset wasn't sure if that was comforting or unnerving. However, Sunset's question would have remained unanswered as suddenly on stage Celeste's heels clicked against the wood when she approached the microphone, and her smile, soft and professional as always, commanding silence over the auditorium. Good afternoon, everyone. She started her speech, her voice powerful but amicable as usual. I wanted to share something a little different today. Sunset arched an eyebrow. What was it? Another uplifting speech about unity and friendship? No doubt. As you know, our school has many talented students, each with their own unique voices, she continued. So starting each month, we'll be hosting a musical showcase. Anyone can join. Soloists, bands, duets. No auditions, no requirements, just music. A school-wide concert, seriously? And now she was looking out into the crowd like this was supposed to inspire somebody. Sunset swore she lingered a second too long in her direction before moving on. A wave of chatter rippled around the students, but Sunset's stomach twisted and her claws dug in her palms once again. Of course. Of course this was about her. Celeste had seen her playing guitar once, and suddenly it was a whole event. Always pulling the strings, always so subtle about it. Couldn't bother asking, could she? Couldn't even listen when Sunset had said that her music was only for herself to hear. Celeste continued, her voice steady and warm. This will be an opportunity to share what moves you, what inspires you. Music is powerful. It helps us connect, heal and grow. Heal and grow. She rolled her eyes. Oh, wonderful. This wasn't about the school at all. It was all about her. Sunset, the little broken charity case. She thought she could be saved by playing a guitar. A small part of her wondered if she was imagining it, but no. She knew better. She could almost see the other Celestia standing there, all radiant patience and careful words, all as if the world wasn't a giant puppet show, as if the world wasn't a giant puppet show for her with all the strings under her control. When the applause and cheers broke out, Sunset didn't join. She just sat there, jaw clenched, hands bleeding from her sharp claws. Around her, Rainbow and Applejack were already buzzing with plans, and Pinkie was bouncing in her seat with excitement. But Sunset, she was just sitting in silence. Not happening. She wasn't going to join. If that manipulative woman thought for even a second that she wasn't going to march up on stage and strum her way to redemption just to make her feel like she'd achieved something, she was wrong. And yet, Celestia spoke of music as this wonderful voice that could help people connect in ways that they hadn't experienced before. Sunset's thoughts betrayed her. Her hands itched, phantom chords pressing against her fingertips. She remembered the rush, the soaring solo, the way people used to look at her when she played. For a fleeting second, it was almost enough to make her want it again. Almost. She forced the thought down, jaw tight, shoulders sinking lower and lower. If Celestia thought she could pull the strings just like that, she was wrong. Sunset Shimmer had broken free from her benevolent hands, and she wasn't going back. That's the end of chapter 10. You guys like my, I don't know how to fucking describe this voice. The new narration voice where it's like kind of, the nonchalant. Or do you guys like she forced the thought down, jaw tight, shoulders sinking lower. Celestia thought she could pull the strings like that? She was wrong. Let me, which one's better? Which voice is, better, narration type shit? So the note says, so what do you think about girls finally making some friends? Hope that you're enjoying as much as I am. Yeah, it's pretty enjoyable, I gotta say. Finally making some friends, yeah. And of course, Rarity had to be such a, I don't know, such a, it's probably not, it probably wasn't the implication, it probably wasn't the intention, but, of course, Rarity had to be the bisexual queen that we all love, complimenting Sunset, but, whatever. Chapter 11, Hopes Betrayed. The Tuesday morning started with golden leaves, scattered by the wind across the pavement, bright against the gray concrete. Still, the 5 girls beneath the candlelight statue carried an unease that no splash of color could brighten. They were all once again discussing how to proceed forward with their new friend, and quickly realizing how complex of a task it'd be. I don't think we should invite her to our band, Applejack said plainly, not bothering to hold back her opinion. But it'd be so much fun, Pinkie protested, and she's our new friend. Wouldn't it be rude not to invite her? I don't know. Rainbow spoke hesitantly, scratching her head. Did you hear what she said yesterday? Fuck. That's just a hard-ass word to say. A superfluous event made to stroke Celestia's ego, Rarity quoted. I also think inviting her is a good idea. We just pressure her. I also don't think inviting her was a good idea. We just pressure her unnecessarily. And we don't even know if she plays an instrument, Rainbow added. I don't play an instrument either, Fluttershy finally spoke up. I don't think that's a good enough reason not to invite her. That's different, Rainbow frowned. We agreed you pick up a percussion instrument, and you'll have time to learn it before the showcase. Sunset can learn too. Fluttershy kept arguing. Listen, Rarity sighed. I want to invite Sunset as much as you do, darling, but expecting her to play in public is a rather tall order. Applejack nodded. We're trying not to overwhelm her, remember? And putting her on the spot with a request to join our band is just a good way to do that. But what about her feelings? Pinkie complained this time.
Won't she feel excluded when we ditch her to rehearse our songs?
Finally, the other girls paused, thinking about Pinky's question. That was certainly a grim possibility that none of them wanted. Now when they finally made some progress with getting Sunset to open up a little more.
I mean,
Applejack shrugged.
we can still invite her to our rehearsals, right? Even if she won't play.
She could be our audience, Verity nodded eagerly. Who knows, maybe she'll ask to join later on.
Could work.
Rainbow smiled.
I mean, there's still time before the showcase, and hopefully she'll change her mind about the event by then.
Fluttershy sighed, but ended up agreeing.
I suppose an indirect approach might be best. Ah, looks like you all agree.
Pinky pouted. I'm sorry, Sugar Cube. Applejack shot her a sympathetic look. I know how much you wanted to invite her, but sometimes it's better to walk on eggshells around Sunset.
You're all treating her like she's a ticking bomb.
Pinky protested her rather passionately, raising her voice even more than usual.
Maybe we should treat her like she's one of us for once.
Pinky's voice resonated in the empty space, her words slowly being carried off by the wind. No one dared meet her eyes as they stood there in silence. Rarity twisted the strap of her purse. Applejack's jaw clenched, and Rainbow's sneakers scuffed hard against the pavement. The more the silence stretched out, the more awkward it felt.
Well, she's not.
Fluttershy whispered the words that were in everyone else's head, her gaze sinking to the ground.
Not yet.
Pinky's mouth opened as if to argue, but when she saw the others nodding, no words came out. What could she even say? She was clearly the only one with a differing opinion.
I hate to say it, but Fluttershy is right.
Applejack spoke at last, rubbing the back of her neck.
We're making progress, yes, but Sunset still seems to be mighty uncomfortable around us, more often than not.
Rarity nodded.
Just yesterday she bolted out of the cafeteria just because I tried giving her jackets.
That's too fast.
Rarity nodded. Just yesterday she bolted out of the cafeteria just because I tried giving her a jacket, she reminded them. Her trust on us is rather fragile, I'll admit. And I doubt excluding her will make her trust us more.
Pinky argued once more. However, the four girls simply averted their eyes, apparently having come to a final decision.
Sorry, Pinky, but this time it's better to be cautious.
Rainbow sighed.
We'll invite her to one of our rehearsals and see how she reacts.
There was a quiet ripple of agreement. Pinky's grin trembled. She crossed her arms over her chest and let out a tiny defiant sniff.
Fine,
she said, but the word came out small and more bitter than she'd like. She had to pop a candy bar in her mouth just to cope with her soured mouth, but even then it didn't feel like it was enough. Sunset was trying very hard not to think about the upcoming musical showcase. It was just a stupid event organized by Celestia to get her to make friends, express herself, and show her talents. What a stupid and ridiculous thing. She never participated. She didn't want to. That said, it wasn't easy to stop thinking about it when there was little else to think about. During the drive to school, Luna didn't say anything, and although in other circumstances Sunset would have appreciated the silence, in this case it was driving her crazy, and she could have sworn Luna was doing it on purpose. Then, when she got to school, the classes weren't much better. They were all just simple enough that she didn't have to pay attention all the time, and if she let her mind wander, it inevitably circled back to the stupid musical showcase. So that left one distraction. That left one distraction. A distraction that was almost as bad as she wanted to distract herself from, almost, the journal. It was still in her backpack. Since she'd finally gotten out of the locker after 2 whole years of leaving it there to rot, but she still hadn't gathered the courage. She still hasn't gathered the courage to open it. Perhaps it was worse to Perhaps it was worse to agonize over its contents days on end than simply open it and get it done with. Perhaps she was being a pathetic coward, but the truth was, every time she tried to open it, her stomach would church painfully. Her hands would get sweaty, and she'd leave it alone for future Sunset to deal with. So she kept on thinking about the journal to distract herself from the musical showcase throughout the entire morning, which really soured her mood. By the time she sat down with the other 5 girls, all she wanted to do was eat lunch undisturbed and get it done with. But of course she couldn't help overhearing the conversation, which, unfortunately, was about the musical showcase. Because why wouldn't it be?
I propose we call this band Rainbow Rocks, Rainbow Dash proposed. After all, I came up with the idea, and I'm the one that knows more about music.
Are you serious? Rarity looked like she was absolutely repelled by the suggestion. Really, darling, can you be any more narcissistic?
Well, I don't see you coming up with anything better,
she shot back. Why don't we just leave the name for later? Applejack intervened, trying to calm down the both of her friends. What's important right now is that we figure out what kind of music we're playing.
She looked around the table. I play bass. Fuck, if I say fucking bass. I play bass and Rainbow plays guitar, so I was thinking maybe a rock band, but I play the drums. Pinky interfered enthusiastically. I've been playing since kindergarten. Right. Applejack had never seen Pinky play before, but knew better than to question her. However, rarity. I told you I'm playing the piano. The girl cut her off with an air of finality. It's a rock band. It's a rock band, not some boring orchestra. Rainbow Dash rolled her eyes. Well, excuse me if I wanted to bring a little class into it, was Rarity's prompt response. As the girls' conversations evolved to a loud discussion about the type of music they'd be playing and the right instruments for it, Sunset tried to tune it out, but she had already finished her food and she couldn't risk getting her journal without the girls asking her about it, so that left one thing. Are you guys seriously going to go to the Are you guys seriously going to join the showcase? Sunset asked Fluttershy while the others were busy arguing. Well, the girl looked a bit unsure. I don't really play an instrument, but they insisted. That's because it's going to be so much fun. Pinkie Pie interfered rather enthusiastically, her grin wide and hopeful. Say, Sunset, would you join us? Would you like to join us? The table froze, forks hovered. Conversation died. Applejack's frown was instant. Rarity's lips pressed together, and Rainbow gave a small, sharp shake of her head. And Fluttershy dropped her gaze into her lap. Sunset felt the sting of it before anyone even spoke. The weight of their silence hit Sunset harder than any insult. You see it now, don't you? The voice curled in her mind like smoke. Proof you don't belong. Sorry, Sugar Cube. Applejack spoke in a gentle tone, giving Sunset an apologetic smile. I'm sure Pinky didn't mean to put you on the spot like that. But I... Pinky tried to protest, but was swiftly interrupted. What she meant, Rarity said, her smile a little too careful, too polished, is that we'd love for you to come to watch us rehearse. We'd really value your... Oh, fuck, that's not a good accent. Is that we'd love for you to come to watch us rehearse. We really value your perspective. It was kindness that didn't feel like kindness. A consolation prize of sorts. Sunset heard that they were what the fuck. Sunset heard what they were saying. You could sit on the sidelines. That's all we trust you with. Her chest tightened. She clenched her fist under the table, but regardless, she tried to maintain a neutral expression. Sure, she muttered, pushing her chair back hard enough to scrape against the floor. Sunset. Pinky reached toward her, but Sunset already stood up, retreating like a coward, running from painful truths like she always did. Where are you going? Rainbow asked, putting her hand on Sunset's shoulder as to stop her. Her tone was caught somewhere between concern and guilt. I'm going to the library. Homework. Sunset shook off her hand without looking back. She didn't see Pinky's devastated expression or Fluttershy's wringing of her hands or Rarity's smile falter into guilt. Instead, she walked away to the sound of her own footsteps, sharp against the cafeteria floor. When Sunset arrived at the library, she slumped at one of those tables on the top floor. She hoped the top floor would be empty, so that she could hide in silence, but silence wasn't kind. Silence had a way of amplifying every thought she was trying to bury. Her quote-unquote friends didn't want her in their band because why would they? The girl who tore the school apart, the monster they had to blast into submission. Why is it always okay? Of course they wouldn't, but shit. Excuse me. Damn. The monster they had to blast his submission, of course they wouldn't. But regardless, their actions had made her confront the fact that perhaps a tiny part of her had wanted to join them. She couldn't care less about the musical showcase, but playing music with her friends, getting to be part of that sounded fun. Not that it mattered anymore. Sunset sighed. There was no point on dwelling on what she couldn't change. So perhaps she should just do her homework as she said she would. She took out her backpack, opened it, and was about to take out her notebook when her hand brushed against something rough and familiar. Not paper, not carton, not leather. The journal. For a moment her breath hitched, and she almost shoved it back down, as if touching it might burn her. But instead, carefully, deliberately, she extracted it, her cutie mark staring at her from its cover in silent judgment. She was a pony, not a human. She would never be. Their little games or stupid bands, none of it should matter. She should only be thinking about Equestria, Celestia, going back. That was all that really mattered. That was what she told herself anyway, so why did it still hurt? Maybe because if what really mattered was Equestria,
She supposed she couldn't put it off forever, could she? She needed to know what Celestia had thought of her during all these years, or rather, if Celestia had thought of her at all. Taking a deep breath to give herself some courage, she gripped the book tightly in her knuckles. She gripped the book tightly until her knuckles turned white. Honestly, she half expected her claws to flare out, but thankfully they didn't. She wasn't a coward. She would open it and she would read it. She would write Celestia, and who knows, maybe the princess would be even powerful enough to open the portal herself and generous enough to let her go back. If she convinced her, which was a big if. If any case, the first step was to open it. If any case, the first step was to open it, which was easier said than done. Sunset closed her eyes, took a few more breaths, and then she finally opened the book. Now she just needed to open her eyes and actually look at it. She forced one eye open, blank. Dread coiled in her stomach until she forced herself to turn back one page. And there it was. Lines. Paragraphs. Message after message of Celestia's careful handwriting. Sunset's stomach flipped. She hadn't been ignored. She hadn't been forgotten. She'd been written to all this time. She let out a breath. She didn't know she'd been holding. It felt good knowing that she hadn't been completely forgotten back at home. Now she needed to see what these messages said. Hopefully they wouldn't all be angry reprimands. Carefully, she searched the first new message and started reading. Sunset Shimmer, come back this instant. You don't know what could be beyond the mirror. It's dangerous. Please come back. Sunset blinked. She braced herself for fury, but instead, it sounded like the princess had been worried after she first came to the human world. But why? She thought she'd thoroughly burnt down any sympathy the princess might have for her. After all, Celestia had pretty much banished her from the castle, hadn't she? Why would it matter to her if Sunset was somewhere in Equestria or in the human world? Confused, she kept reading. Sunset, if you can see these words, then know I never meant for our last conversation to end as it did. I feared what the mirror was doing to you, and in my fear I pushed you away. That was my failure, not yours. Please come back. We can talk. I want to listen this time. The girl inhaled sharply. Apologies? Regret? That didn't fit Celestia as she remembered. The one who'd call the guards on her without a second thought. These were just empty words, just a trick to draw her back. And yet, the way she phrased it, as if she failed Sunset, scratched at something deep inside of her. Sunset Shimmer, the portal's closing in just a couple of hours, and I have no doubt you're aware of that. Once it closes, it'll take 30 moons to open again. Is that really what you want? To be stuck in whatever world you're in for so long, on your own? Please, Sunset, I beg you. Cross back before the way is lost. Sunset resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Yeah, the princess had been concerned, so what? If she cared so much, why didn't she come herself? No, the words were sweet, but the actions told the truth. She wasn't worth the effort. More so, she had been the one who exiled her. She was such a hypocrite. I'm not gonna lie, that narrator voice last time was kind of mid. I listened to that; it was kind of mid. I'm not gonna lie, so I guess I'll go back to the other one. I don't know. She wasn't worth the effort. More so, she had been the one who exiled her. She was a hypocrite. Ignoring the ache in her heart, she moved on to the next page. Sunset. Wait, the fuck? Who's saying this? Oh, I'm fucking reading. Okay, yeah. Sunset. Perhaps I'm writing to the void. Perhaps you'll never see this, but I can't stop. I need to believe that you survived. Perhaps it's a foolish hope. No pony has ever survived for so long in a foreign dimension. At least not that I'm aware of, but if some pony could pull it off, it'd be you. You're brilliant, Sunset. You're strong, you're passionate, you're smart. I'm sorry if you feel like I was neglecting you or like I was keeping things from you. I was trying to protect you, but I'm afraid this protection might have been exactly what drove you away from me. All I ask now, all I need is one answer, just one word to know you're still alive. My mouth is like very juicy sounding right now. The words twisted in her gut. Celestia had written as though Sunset was some fallen hero whose grave she visited in ink and parchment. The girl wanted to sneer, to laugh at the melodrama, but the truth was simpler, crueler. Celestia mourned her, and the thought didn't exactly sit well with her. But still, despite her discomfort, she kept reading. My dearest Sunset, I just want you to know that you have never left my thoughts, not once. Since the moment I lost you,
and I sincerely hope that you're safe and sound. A lot has happened since then. I took in a new pupil, a brilliant little filly named Twilight Sparkle. She reminds me so much of you. That said, please don't think I'm trying to replace you. You'll always have a special place in my heart. Sunset, my little son. You were the best student I'd had in many decades, perhaps in centuries. But more than that, I raised you. I had a bond with you like I've never had with any other student. But I was too foolish, too cowardly to admit it. Not even to myself. Not until it was too late. I failed you, my little son. I realize that now. I pushed you away in your hour of need, when I should have pulled you closer. And now that mistake will haunt me for the rest of my days. I won't make the same mistake with Twilight. I'll honor your memory by being there for her, the way I wasn't there for you. But you'll always be my little son, the brightest part of my long life. This letter made her ache with foolish longing. It was almost enough to make her believe Celestia actually cared. Almost. But everything the princess had said was true. She had been a coward. She cared more about her standing with the nobles, her reputation, her royal duties. Everything always took priority over Sunset. All those nights she read her a story before bedtime, all those warm hugs and fun magic lessons, they hadn't mattered as much to the princess as they did for her. For her, if they had, then how could she have cast her out like garbage? Why had she never admitted to the bond they had? Why had Twilight, perfect little Twilight, been given everything Sunset had begged for? A crown, a throne, love without conditions, a place next to Celestia. The tears came, hot and unbidden, and she hated herself for letting them. But they still hit the old pages, smearing the ink despite her best efforts. It took her a few minutes to collect herself enough that her tears wouldn't cloud her vision when she tried to read. Part of her was tempted to leave the rest of the journal for another day, but no, she had to know. Only a few more messages. She could do it. How many years have passed since my last message? 10? Although I'm not sure how time works the same way, although I'm not sure time works the same way wherever you are. For so long, I believe I had lost you forever, but despite the fact that you came without, that you, fuck, despite the fact that you came with bad intentions and stole Twilight's crown, I felt relief. Relief that you still lived. Please, Sunset, return the crown, offer your apology, and I will forgive you all that has passed. Whether you wish to be my student again or walk your own path, Equestria will welcome you back. I will welcome you home. Home, as if she had one. As if the place she'd been thrown out so cruelly could ever be called that again. Did Celestia really think a few kind words would erase that memory? That pain? Not only that, offering that to her was foolish, really. It seemed like the princess had been clinging to that hope. There was still some good inside of her former student when there wasn't. She could never have accepted that offer. Back then it would have been because of hatred and bitter anger. Now it was just pride and fear of being hurt again. In any case, although she couldn't fully trust Celestia's words, she turned the page and prepared herself to read the last message. She just wanted to get this over with. My dear Sunset, Princess Twilight told me that she left you in good hands. She explained to me everything that happened, and although I wish she'd brought you back to Equestria, I understand and respect your decision. I sincerely hope that you can learn from the magic of friendship that I obviously felt to teach you, and come out of this experience a changed pony. Human, I suppose. Still, I now realize that perhaps I wasn't the best teacher for you. Twilight, despite her young age, has a gift I lack, the gift of reaching hearts I could not touch. It's for this reason that I will now place this journal in her care. Please, if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out to Twilight for advice, for guidance, or anything else. And she's promised me that she'll do her best to assist you. I'll always love you, Sunset, but perhaps she can give you what I cannot. I will always love you, but that was the dagger. There was always a but somewhere, wasn't there? Love with limits, love with conditions, love that could be passed along the twilight like some cursed relic she never meant to keep. An indescribable rage filled Sunset. Claws sprouted from her fingers, fangs flared in her mouth. Her vision turned red, and her body ached before she could think. She grabbed the journal and hurled it with all her strength towards a nearby bookshelf. She tossed it like she wanted to hit Celestia herself with it, to make her fall and crumple and stay silent for once. It collided with the other books, then dropped down with a thud and landed face down, its pages wrinkling and bending. But she couldn't bring herself to care. The princess had given up on her. Of course she'd given up on her. And of course Celestia had given the journal to Twilight. It was always Twilight, perfect Twilight, clever Twilight. The student who could do no wrong. Sunset wasn't even allowed to scream at Celestia anymore.
Her words would only ever echo into Twilight's smug, condescending face. Sunset clenched her fist, drawing blood once more from the abused skin of her palms, but she didn't care. Those messages, those letters, for a moment, there she had almost let herself think that Celestia actually cared about her, despite everything, but of course, clinging to such foolish hope had only led to her disappointment once again. Still, she willed herself to stop crying. She had no tears left for Celestia. The well had run dry, not even hatred was worth wasting on her anymore. Despite how much Sunset tried, she could never fully get rid of Celestia's ghost, which would have remained clinging to her, like chains she would drag forever, invisible but unbreakable. That's the end of chapter 12. Here's the note. Well, now we know a little bit more about Princess Celestia, even if it's not exactly what Twilight had hoped for, or Sunset had hoped for. Thanks for reading and for all your comments. I really appreciate them. Chapter 12, Beyond Perfection. Sunset found herself in a... Hold on. I'll probably some toast. I don't know. Sunset found herself in a familiar... I'm gonna make some toast. Taking a deep breath, she knocked gently, hoping she'd actually get an answer. "Come in," came Luna's voice from inside. Slowly and trying to steady her shaking hands, Sunset pushed the door open and was met with a surprised look of Luna, although the woman quickly tried to remain neutral as she got up from her desk. "Sunset." She went towards her, no doubt noticing her distraught expression, and pulled out a chair from the large table that was in the middle of the office. "Please take a seat." Nodding, Sunset sat down, dropped her backpack to the ground, and then placed her elbows on the table and buried her face on the palms of her hands. She felt awful. She wanted to disappear entirely. She didn't want to feel anything anymore. Still, she forced herself to take deep breath after deep breath and calm herself down, acutely aware of the fact Luna had taken a seat right next to her and was now observing her without saying a word. What happened? I forgot. Hold on. Oh, because she read the book. Okay, yeah, okay. Um, After an uncomfortable amount of time spent in silence, Luna finally decided to talk. "Sunset, what's wrong?" Her voice was gentle but filled with concern. "What's wrong?" She lifted up her face and stared at Luna with disbelief. Everything is wrong. There's not a single thing in my life that feels right." To her credit, Luna didn't even flinch at her outburst. She just kept staring at her with a neutral expression that Sunset couldn't quite read. "Care to elaborate?" she asked after a few seconds of contemplation. Sunset wasn't sure why, but the answer infuriated her. She gritted her teeth. "I used to be the most powerful unicorn in all of Equestria, and now—" She trailed off, feeling as tears prickled her eyes, but she set her eyes to white, unwilling to let them fall. "Now?" Luna prompted. "I mean, look at me!" Sunset yelled, opening her eyes and glaring at the woman as if daring her to say she didn't look like a pathetic mess. Luna did look at her, letting her eyes roam through Sunset's distraught expression, then to the jacket Rarity had made for her, and finally to her bald fist resting on the table. She took a deep breath. "You're not a unicorn anymore," she nodded, "but you are a young woman full of potential." Sunset scoffed. "Potential?" "You might not have magic anymore, but you're smart," she kept going, "and you're improving every day, little by little." "Yeah, right," she rolled her eyes, crossing her arms over her chest. It didn't feel like she was improving at all. Luna sighed. "Do you truly believe that nothing has changed between last Monday and today?" Sunset opened her mouth to reply, to tell her that no, absolutely nothing had changed, that except now she even felt more miserable, but unfortunately she did pause to think about it. Last Monday she was homeless. She was wearing a ragged jacket. She had no one to care for her, no friends. Rainbow Dash still hated her, and Pinky's touch made her flinch. Saying that nothing had changed would be a blatant lie. "No," she exhaled quietly, her shoulders slumping just a little, but still. "Still?" Luna prompted. "I feel empty," she confessed, a pained expression on her face, choosing to stare at the table instead of the woman next to her. Luna hummed in acknowledgement and then got up, went to her desk, and returned, placing an empty mug in front of her. "Do you know what's good about being empty?" she asked. "That you can fill the void with whatever you want." She promptly filled the mug with coffee from a thermos and offered it to the girl. Real as shit. Reluctantly, Sunset took the mug, and she had to admit its warmth felt comforting, even if she didn't really want coffee right now. She still took a small sip, just to stall the conversation a bit longer, and she appreciated how the bitter liquid matched her current mood. She wasn't sure she would be able to. She wasn't sure if she would have been able to handle something sweet. "Maybe I don't want to fill that void," she said at last. "Why not?" Luna asked. "Because last time I tried," she sighed deeply, "I turned into a raging demon." It doesn't mean it'll be the same this time, she answered, contemplative. Maybe not, Sunset had to admit. After all, she did have plans. She didn't have plans to steal a powerful magical artifact anytime soon, and yet somehow that felt even worse. But I have nothing to fill that void anymore. Nothing? Luna asked and frowned when she was met with a shake of Sunset's head. Well, the good news is that you don't have to fill it right now. Sunset turned to stare at her like she was crazy. Feeling empty was the worst thing ever. How could she suggest that she just live with it? Perhaps you should first understand what left you that void, and what it filled with before, she explained after a pause. And Sunset had to reluctantly nod, agreeing that her words made sense. She took a deep breath, choosing to answer the second question first. Ambition, she whispered. It was filled with ambition. Ambition, Luna repeated, with a searing look on her face. Ambition for what exactly? For being the best, for becoming a princess, for proving to the princess that I was actually. She trailed off, closing her eyes to once again prevent tears from falling. Her expression was pained. I don't know, I just wanted to be loved. Luna provided, but the word felt like a knife inside Sunset's chest, twisting painfully and mocking her. It made her tears finally spill out despite herself. She hated it. She didn't want to accept it, but she didn't need it to. She didn't need to, did she? Sunset. The older woman carefully passed a tissue to her, which Sunset promptly used to wipe her tears, even if she knew more would follow. It's not a bad thing to want love, or recognition, or even power. We all do it to some extent. She took a deep breath, as if preparing herself for what she'd say next. But if you base your worth on people's expectations, you'll never get to be who you truly are. Sunset snorted at the comment. I think we both know what I truly. I think we both know what I truly are. I truly am. Enlighten me. A demon, she yelled, and she was pretty sure canines extended in reaction to her emotions. Yet if Luna noticed it, she didn't react at all. I'm an evil monster that almost destroyed everything. To her surprise, Luna just hummed in acknowledgement and kept staring at her with her curious eyes. Is that who you truly are, or just what you ended up becoming while trying to prove your worth to someone else? I Sunset wanted to protest to say that yes, that was her, but was that even the point? What was even the point? She wasn't fooling Luna, and she certainly wasn't fooling herself. She sighed and buried her face in her palms, wishing to disappear. She simply let out a frustrated groan instead. But then what am I supposed to do? She asked in exasperation. Everyone has expectations regardless, but even if they don't, she paused, remembering the bothersome journal stuffed inside her backpack and the painful words it contained. It's way worse if they don't. Really? Luna's voice wasn't surprised, just inquisitive. And why is that? Because she lifted her head, frowning as she looked at the older woman. Wasn't it obvious? Because then it means they've given up on you. And you? Once again, she answered with another question. Have you given up on yourself? Maybe. The honest answer surprised them both, and upon seeing the most worried look Sunset had ever witnessed on Luna's face, wanted to immediately take it back. Sunset. Luna's voice was soft and sad as she spoke. What's the point on trying? She spoke, voice strained with barely suppressed sobs. Everyone expects me to fail, to do something wrong, and they're right. I don't expect you to fail. Luna's calm words felt like a gut punch. I expect you to stumble along the way, to make mistakes, to learn from them, and then keep going. A second passed in the silence as Sunset processed her words, then she sighed. What's the difference? The difference is the outcome, she remarked. You either accept your failures and learn from them to make a better future for yourself, or you keep making the same mistakes over and over again until it's too late to go back. The girl pursed her lips. That's not really how I do things, she admitted. Failure was never something I admitted for myself. You sound just like Celestia. Luna's voice was calm, almost casual, compared to everything else she'd said so far, but it hurt more nonetheless. For a moment, Sunset was tempted to clutch her chest to alleviate the pain, despite knowing how futile it'd be. What? She was barely able to mumble. Luna simply shrugged in response. She hates failure, mostly in herself, she revealed. Her voice was calm but carrying a weight Sunset couldn't quite place. She can't stand it, she can't face it, and she certainly can't live with it. She paused, her shoulders slumping slightly, as if recalling how it feels to be under that pressure herself.
That's why sometimes she can be overbearing. She's scared of failing you, and so she overcompensates. But when she realizes she's not meeting her self-imposed expectations, she pulls away, pushes you aside, not because she stops caring, but because she can't bear to see the proof of her own mistakes staring back at her. Sunset's hands tightened around the mug. That sounded awfully familiar, and for a moment she wasn't sure if Luna was talking about Celestia the human, or Celestia the immortal alicorn from another land. But of course, she expects everyone else to also survive, to also strive for perfection. So believe me, I know how the weight of someone else's expectations can sometimes make you sink to the bottom, she continued, shooting Sunset a knowing smile. But if you shake them off, soon you'll find yourself all the way to the top, right? I. Sunset wasn't sure about what she wanted to say. Maybe she didn't want to say anything, and maybe she didn't have to either. She thought back to the journal she read less than an hour ago, the sting of anger still raw. She recalled the way Celestia had seemed to abandon her, leaving her for Twilight to deal with instead. But now, with Luna's words echoing in her mind, a different truth began to take shape. Maybe Celestia hadn't given up on her after all. Maybe the two Celestias, the human and the alicorn, were as alike as Sunset had once feared, both striving for protection, both terrified of failing. And if that was the case, then perhaps the perfect princess hadn't abandoned her out of apathy, but because she couldn't bear the weight of her own mistakes. The burden of how deeply she felt her student. The realization hit Sunset like a cold, creeping fire. Every heartbeat hammered the truth deeper. Celestia, the untouchable, perfect princess, was just a mask, concealing someone just as flawed as she herself was. Seeing the cracks in her flawless facade ignited a twisted, guilty satisfaction in Sunset. Even perfection could falter, then she didn't need its approval anymore. And with that realization, the weight of Celestia's judgment began to loosen. With a steadier breath, Sunset lifted her head. The raw sting of tears was still there, but something else flickered beneath it now. Something she hadn't felt in weeks. Not hope exactly, but the faint outline of direction. What should I do then? She asked quietly. It didn't sound like a challenge anymore, more like a genuine question. Luna smiled, soft and unintrusive, and shook her head. You should ask yourself that. Think carefully about your answer. It's not only about what you want right now, but about what you want to become. Sunset sat with that for a moment. The words didn't hand her a solution, and the fog in her head didn't clear at once, but it thinned just enough to glimpse a path. Maybe not an easy one, maybe not even a straight one, but a path. I think I understand, she said at last. Her voice was still rough but steadier. She stood and wiped her face with the tissue, trying to erase the evidence of her crying, as futile as it was. I should go back to class now. Of course. Just a moment. Luna crossed to her desk, wrote a note, and handed it over, a pass excusing her absence. And don't hesitate to come to me if you ever need to talk again. Day or night, I'm here for you. Sunset took the slip and stared at it for a heartbeat too long. Authority figures had never felt safe for her, but they had always been walls of weapons, never lifelines. But Luna was different. Something about the woman's patience and her quiet support felt like a hand extended, not a leash tightening. Against her own instincts, Sunset realized that she believed her. I will, she murmured, and this time the words felt like promise rather than politeness. A small, genuine smile tugged at her lips as she added, Thank you. You're welcome. Luna's answering nod was warm but brief, but as Sunset reached for the door, the woman added gently, But you know my sister is there for you too. I know you don't get along, but she means well. If you just give her another chance. The words hit Sunset like a pebble thrown into a small pond, ripples spread. Images of Celestia's stern gaze, of the journal's painful words, of the expectations that had once felt like iron shackles. Luna's comment wasn't wrong. A part of her even wanted to believe it, but the wound was still raw, and the memory of being pushed away still burned. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and her eyebrows furrowed tightly. Just think about it, Luna said softly. Sunset didn't answer. Her hands tightened on the doorknob, knuckles white. For a breath, she hovered there, the past crumpling slightly in her grip, caught between gratitude and old resentment. Then she exhaled, opened the door, and stepped through, letting it close behind her with more force than she intended. She was grateful for Luna. She even felt lighter, but she was done dealing with the Celestias. She already had enough of them for a lifetime, or 10. When Sunset returned to her class, she could feel Rarity's gaze glued at her back pretty much the whole lecture. Thankfully, she didn't share this particular class with anyone else, any other one of the girls, but it was still rather upsetting.
She knew Rarity would probably try talking to her once the class was over, so as soon as the bell rang, she grabbed her stuff and practically ran towards the exit. She was walking hastily on the hallway, thinking she'd gotten away when a familiar voice thwarted her plans. "Sunset, darling," Rarity called, her tone warm and worried. Sunset quickened her pace, mumbling hurried excuses, but Rarity matched her step for step. "Are you okay? Can we talk?" Rarity asked gently, walking right beside her. Sunset's okay. Let me lock the fuck in. Sunset's mouth went dry. She wanted to snap at her, push her away, and the words escaped bitterly before she could filter them. "There's nothing to talk about." "But there is." Rarity put herself in front of Sunset, stopping her dead in her tracks, and gave her the most regretful and earnest expression Sunset had ever seen on her face yet. We're sorry about what happened," she sighed. "We talked about it after you left, and well, if you don't want to be part of the band, that's fine, but—" She trailed off, giving Sunset a tiny, hopeful smile. "The invitation is open, okay, from all of us." Sunset's eyes opened wide. She hadn't expected this, not at all. She thought they wouldn't want her to be in the band at all, that the sole notion was unthinkable, but there Rarity was, assuring her of the opposite. Still, she didn't quite know how to answer. She didn't want to give in to Celestia's desires and participate in the musical showcase, but she also didn't want to outright turn down the invitation. For some reason, her body recoiled at the mere thought. So, what to do? Thankfully, Rarity kept talking when she noticed her lack of answer. "Meanwhile, you can come watch us play. Maybe it'll help you decide." She shot her a reassuring smile. Sunset blinked. The thought that they might actually want her there was too good to be true. Fake. A shaky resolution at best, but part of her wanted to say no immediately, another part wanted to crawl into a corner and avoid the girls altogether. Sunset noticed her hesitation and softened her tone. "Just think about it, all right, darling?" "Sure," Sunset muttered, surprising even herself. It felt like a compromise, not a surrender. Rarity's relieved nod was brief before she left toward her locker, leaving Sunset alone. Sunset opened her own locker slowly, her hands trembling slightly as she retrieved her books. She'd been invited, yes, but something still felt off. The invitation didn't feel entirely sincere, or maybe it did, but Celestia's shadow still hung over everything, tainting the notion with obligation. She let out a long sigh, staring at her locker doors. Why did feelings have to be so damn complicated? A part of her wanted to refuse outright, but a part of her wondered what it would feel like to give in, just a little. Not out of desire to please the girls, and certainly not to placate Celestia's expectations, but for herself. When dinner rolled around, all Sunset wanted to do was collapse on her bed and forget the day had ever happened. Truth be told, she probably would have skipped the meal entirely if Luna wasn't there to ease the tension with Celestia. And if she thought Celestia would ever let her, and if she thought Celestia would ever let her skip a meal. So it was with reluctant steps that she sat down at the table that night. Still, Luna's encouraging smile did serve to ease her mood slightly. She could get through this. She just had to eat as fast as possible, ignore the two adults as per usual, and go back to the safe quiet of her room. Celestia put a dish in front of her, and although it was rather simple, meat, salad, and some mashed potatoes, it smelled delicious nonetheless. She hated how her mouth watered, hated how much she'd come to rely on the simple comfort of a warm meal 3 times a day in such a short time. Celestia wasn't a bad cook, she had to give her that. Not that she expected her to be. So without wasting another second, she started cutting her meat rather hastily and shoving it inside her mouth. She tried to eat fast, but the amazing flavor forced her to slow down and savor the taste, and savor it at least. When Celestia's voice interrupted her meal, she wished she had picked up the pace instead. "So are you thinking of joining the musical showcase?" Celestia asked, her tone light, almost too casual. "I've already received plenty of applications from the other groups. It seems the whole school wants to participate." She chuckled, clearly pleased with herself. Sunset grinded her teeth and then looked up at her with her utter annoyance, entirely forgetting about the meal. Thankfully, Luna interfered. "Sister, if Sunset hasn't applied for the event, maybe she shouldn't pry," she said conciliatorily, before taking a sip of her water from her glass. "Let's keep our jobs separate from home, all right?" "But I just asked if she's interested," Celestia said a little too quickly. "That's a normal thing for a parent to ask, isn't it?" Sunset flinched, heat rising under her skin, the demon inside crawling at the surface, fighting to be released. A low growl slipped past her teeth. "You're not my mom," she snarled. Too angry, too defensive, too quick, as if trying to protect something fragile inside herself. Oh, of course not. Thankfully, Celestia didn't try to argue at that point, yet her smile felt fake and awkward. But I am your guardian, and I think it's only natural for me to be curious about your school life, isn't it? Sunset sighed and reclined back in her chair, staring up at the ceiling, as if it could somehow help her deal with Celestia and her stupid, condescending voice in a way that wouldn't further escalate the situation, but no such luck. I told you that my music was for only me to hear. She glared angrily at the woman. And what did you do? Go make a whole event about it. She chuckled bitterly, shaking her head. I can see right through your little farce. You don't fool me. Silence reigned at the table for a few awkward moments. Celestia stared at Sunset with surprise for a moment, but then her eyes dropped to her own plate and shifted frantically as if searching for something to say. Luna, meanwhile, alternated her gaze between the two of them, a neutral expression on her face. At the end, it was Luna who spoke. You think Celestia organized a musical showcase just to make you play in front of the school? Her voice didn't carry disbelief, but also didn't seem to support Sunset's claims. It was perfectly neutral. I know so, Sunset reiterated, trying to make the younger one of the sisters understand her point of view. I mean, she hears me play on Saturday, and then she announces an event about it, all about a music, and then she announces an event all about music on Monday? Come on, I'm not an idiot. Celestia sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose with her fingers before finally looking at Sunset. You know these things are planned weeks or even months in advance, right? Sunset hesitated, embarrassed. She hadn't known that, and the way Celestia said it made her feel quite stupid. In her defense, back in Equestria, the princess could have organized whatever event she wanted at the school for gifted unicorns at the drop of a hat. Then again, that Celestia was literally the ruler of an entire land. Luna chose to interfere once again before Sunset could respond. It's true that you already had proposed the idea to the school board to hold a new event after the disaster that was the fall formal. She glanced briefly at Sunset, then kept talking. But your decision to make it all about music was unknown even for me until yesterday. Well, Celestia tried to argue, but ultimately her guilty expression betrayed her. Yeah, but that's not exactly as Sunset is implying. Care to elaborate? Luna raised an eyebrow, and Sunset was glad she was the one doing the interrogatory. Interrogation, I mean. I guess maybe that's what they meant to write, because she wasn't sure she'd be able to remain calm. Watching her play gave me a moment of realization, that's all. She sighed, running a hand through her long, colorful hair. I didn't know exactly what I wanted the event to be about, but I don't know exactly what I wanted the event to be about, but I knew I wanted to encourage unity among the students, and what better way to communicate through music, right? Bullshit. Sunset spat bitterly, hitting the table with her palms as she stood up in anger. When you watched me play, you said that my music could help others see me in a new light, she grimaced, remembering the conversation. This showcase seems like a perfect excuse to get me to play in front of the school and change their perception of me, doesn't it? She glared at Celestia, crossing her arms over her chest. How is that a bad thing exactly? This time Luna's questioning was directed at her, but at least it was neutral as the other times. Because everyone hates me, and playing on the stage seems like a good idea, a good way to get food thrown at my face, she answered, rather agitated. Luna seemed to think over the words for a moment, then nodded. I see your point, she agreed. But no one is forcing you to participate, so why are you so angry about all of this? Because this reeks of her manipulation, Sunset yelled. Agitated, it felt like a test, a stupid big test about friendship and music that she was failing at both fronts, miserably, and she hated how inadequate that made her feel. She's pulling the strings behind the curtains like some grand puppet master. She turned to glare at the woman in question. You think you're above asking, above listening. You've always been like that. Only once a deafening silence fell over the table. The sunset realized the 4 days weren't nearly enough to say that Celestia always did anything, and that she'd been projecting her feelings about her old mentor. Again, she sat down, not actually regretting her words. They were likely true anyways, but feeling embarrassed about having voiced them nonetheless. The three of them remained in silence after that. Luna alternated her gaze between the other two, while Celestia stared at Sunset with a mix of guilt, confusion, and realization. She didn't have time to think about it. However, before Luna spoke again, she didn't have time to think about it, however, before Luna spoke again. Even if what you're saying is true, even if Celestia intended for you to join, that doesn't mean that you have to bend to her expectations, right, sister? She turned to Celestia, giving her an encouraging smile. Yet their words resonated inside Sunset's chest, reminding her of their conversation earlier at school. Right. She didn't have to please Celestia, so what did it matter if she disappointed her? I'm be real, I don't know where I was. I might reread like a part, I don't know. Right. She didn't have to please Celestia, so what did it matter if she disappointed her? Sunset wished she could have said that she didn't care at all about what the woman thought or wanted from her, yet staring at her now, her earlier conviction began to waver. It wasn't easy shaking off old habits. Celestia's gaze softened as she listened to her sister's words and gazed at Sunset, apparently finding something in her expression that made her more sympathetic towards the teen. That's right, she spoke warmly, despite how harshly Sunset had addressed her before. You don't have to participate in this showcase. It's just there, and as an option for when or if you ever feel ready. Sunset's jaw tightened, the familiar knot of suspicion forming in her chest. No matter what Celestia said, her words still felt like yet another way to pressure her. But you expect me to. It wasn't a question, she knew. Celestia paused, her shoulders shifting slightly, the faintest shadow of hesitation crossing her composed expression. I want you to, she admitted cautiously, her voice softer than usual. But what I want is irrelevant. The decision is yours to make, Sunset, and whatever you choose, I will respect it, I promise. Sunset blinked, frowning, her mind racing. Was she just saying that as a way to guilt trip her into doing it anyway? Or was she actually serious? The vulnerable, sincere voice Celestia had spoken in, it wasn't like anything she ever heard from the princess, so it was easier to differentiate between the two. It made her more inclined to trust her sincerity despite the lingering skepticism. I gotta say, I can imagine like people reading this, like certain types of people being extremely like annoyed by this type of character, because like I don't know if it's like just men, like guys, they don't like these fucking like characters with actual problems and actual like habits from trauma and stuff, like how people used to hate on like Skylar White and stuff. A small reluctant acknowledgement crept in. Even if this was a subtle pressure, Celestia had said it out loud. She put it out there. Now she couldn't hold it against her if she chose differently from what she wanted. Sunset shifted on her seat, fingers still digging into the wood before finally loosening their grip. A shaky breath escaped her lips, and for this first time in that evening, her shoulders sagged instead of bracing. She picked up her fork again and finally let herself keep eating, ignoring the fact that the food had grown cold during their argument. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that Celestia for the first time had put the choice where it belonged, firmly in Sunset's hands. So that's into chapter 12. That one felt shorter, I don't know. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention. You have you have 3 more chapters left. Or 2, I don't know. Maybe 2, 3. Chapter 3. This chapter contains references to coerced intimacy and its emotional aftermath. So, some fucking juicy shit about to happen, I'm not gonna lie. And you might say I'm a fucking bad person for saying that, but we all know why we're here. Chapter 13, Between Harmony and Dissonance. Sunset took a deep breath as she stood at the door to the music classroom in front of her. She'd been here before, of course, back when she was dating Flash. She went there practically every day, and theoretically, this particular classroom held no bad memories for her. Still, her stomach churned out of the thought of stepping inside. It was Friday afternoon. The past 3 days, the girls had been practicing with their instruments on their own and discussing what they played at the actual showcase. Sunset knew because lately all of her conversations at the cafeteria seemed to always circle back to their band. And today'd be their first actual rehearsal as a group. Not that Sunset would be playing, of course. She was just there as an audience. She didn't have to play. Even if Rarity and Pinky had suggested that she could, ultimately the truth was obvious. So taking another deep breath, ignoring the pain on her chest, Sunset pushed the door open and stepped inside. She found all the girls already there, tuning their instruments, going over their music sheets and testing the sound. One girl was missing. Who was that? Sunset! The loud yell interrupted her thoughts. A moment later, a pair of arms enveloped her from behind, squeezing her a little too tightly. Pinky. She grabbed the girl's hands and tried to pry herself free to no avail. She turned to glare at her, but Pinky just answered with a wide smile. I'm so happy you came, she said sincerely, nuzzling against Sunset's back. A week ago, Sunset would have probably recoiled violently from the touch, but At this point, she was so used to Pinky's displays of affection, thanks to her involuntary exposure therapy, so she simply sighed. Pinky, you're going to bruise my ribs, she protested, but the girl simply hugged her tighter, much to Sunset's dismay. Pinky, darling, please give Sunset some space, Verity spoke up, walking over. It's not very polite to hug people like that. Oh, but it's not fun. I'll bet that's not fun, Pinky pouted, but let go of Sunset anyway. Thank you. The redhead sighed in relief, looking at Rarity. Don't mention it, darling. Now we should probably get the rehearsals started, if we want to have time to do this at all. She turned and looked at Rainbow Dash, who ultimately seemed to have turned to the default leader of the group. Yeah, the sooner the better, she nodded. Although the first song I picked is pretty easy in my opinion, she continued rather confidently. Just to warm up to test the waters. I think the song I proposed was easier, Fluttershy interfered shyly, raising a hand as if they were in class. Yeah, but it wasn't awesome. It wasn't as awesome as mine. Rainbow quickly dismissed her with the wave of her hand. Oh, okay. Of course the timid girl didn't protest further. I think we're all ready, Dash. Applejack spoke, having finished her bass. Shall we start? We have finished tuning her bass. Shall we start? Yeah, put your butts in position, she said, looking at Rarity and Pinkie Pie, who were still by Sunset's side. Once the girls were in position, they waited for Pinkie to start. 1, 2, 3, and... They started playing the song they'd been rehearsing on their own. It was a rather simple and popular song Rainbow had picked precisely because they already knew it, and would therefore be able to play it more easily than a brand new one. It was meant simply to get them used to playing as a group, but ultimately wouldn't be part of the showcase. Honestly, Sunset had expected them to sound worse. Applejack's playing was a bit insecure, and Rainbow had trouble following the rhythm instead of rushing ahead. Fluttershy's playing was a little too quiet, and Pinky's a little too loud. But overall, at the very least, it sounded like music. Once the song was over, Rainbow looked expectantly at her. Well? She asked. I didn't feel any need to cover. Oh, fuck. You know, Loki, she sounds like a fucking grown woman. Well, like, I don't know how to sound like a fucking. I didn't feel the need to cover my ears. It was all the commentary she could give. Ouch, her friend grimaced. But yeah, I understand what you mean. Well, at least she'd be honest. At least she was honest, Applejack shrugged. After all, after that, the girls started discussing what they could improve and how, and testing out loudly they each have to play in order to not overshadow the others. Sunset was just starting to zone out, relaxing herself into the chair and debating whether to pull out her math homework or just keep listening to the endless chatter when the door creaked open. Her stomach dropped. Flash walked in, casual as ever, heading straight to the back of the room. He didn't even glance at her, didn't even say a word, just brushed past to grab his guitar, which had been leaning against the wall. Sunset stiffened in her chair. Of course he ignored her. Why wouldn't he? Still, the knot in her chest tested her. The knot in her chest tightened anyway. He greeted the others, smiling at Rainbow, laughing with Pinky, and asking AJ something about her bass, but never once looked her way. To him, she was little more than a shadow. Her heart thudded in her ears. It shouldn't matter. It was better this way, and yet. Images rose unbidden. His easy grin when he'd first offered his guitar lessons, the way his jacket had always kept her warm on bitter winter nights, his gentle voice, always asking how she was, even when she didn't deserve it. And underneath all of that, the truth she loathed most of all, she might have been completely indifferent to the boy, but she had really only accepted to and underneath all of that, the truth she loathed the most of all, she might have not been completely indifferent to the boy, but she had already only accepted to date him for 3 reasons: attention, status, and curiosity. She didn't like to admit it, but she'd been a bit curious about romantic relationships, specifically about her own stand on the matter, since she hadn't felt attracted to anyone before, and as she soon discovered, Flash wasn't the exception either. Still, she stuck with him. Having Flash as a boyfriend had way more benefits than downsides, starting from the free guitar lessons, the video game nights, gifts, free meals, and even a warm place to stay during cold winter nights. He gave more than she ever offered back, and she knew it, and yet she still felt like their relationship had gone further than she wanted to. Whenever certain topics came up, her body and mind recoiled instinctively, but even so, she knew she could only say no so many times before he'd start to question why. Moreover, his gentle reassurances often felt more like a challenge to her. Of course she was ready, or so she told herself. At the end, despite going against everything she wanted, she relented because the alternative was losing the one bit of stability she had. The memory pressed down on her like a heavy weight, dragging her to impossible depths. She remembered lying awake afterwards, staring at the ceiling, shame coiling tighter and tighter until it felt like it would choke her. That shame hadn't left. It never left. Now Flash stood across the room laughing with the girls and blatantly ignoring her resistance, like the relationship had been no more insignificant to him than it had for her, than it had been to her. Fuck. Like the relationship had been even more insignificant to him than it had been to her. Like that night hadn't mattered at all. Like she didn't matter at all. She didn't blame him. She couldn't. This was the ending she'd written for herself. She'd poisoned whatever good there might have been between them, and now she was just a bad memory to him, an inconvenience he couldn't be bothered to acknowledge. She let out a shaky breath, hugging her arms around herself. What good would it be to dwell on it? It was over. It had never truly mattered. She closed her eyes, trying to block out his presence entirely, but her ears picked up on some words anyways. I don't fucking do voice to this first guy. I don't suppose, I don't suppose any of our friends, out of town will come, he asked, hopeful in a way that twisted something sharp inside her. It being a special charity event and all. Sunset's eyes snapped open, a frown tugging at her mouth. Was he talking about Twilight? Of course he was. Her mind immediately went back to her backpack, where that journal lay like a loaded weapon. Sorry, Flash, but I don't think Twilight's coming to be back at Kennerlock anytime soon, Applejack said, blunt as ever. The portal was sealed and they all knew it. Oh yeah. Okay, I thought I'd ask. He mumbled, the hope draining out of him as fast as it flared. He tried to disguise it with a laugh, with casual words, but Sunset saw it for what it was. Desperation dressed up as small talk. Sunset rolled her eyes, but there was no bite behind it, only bitterness. He wasn't fooling anyone. His crush on Twilight was obvious, clumsy, pathetic even. Yet the thought of him offering that eager smile to someone else, someone better, burned like acid. Especially given how purposely he ignored Sunset now. When he left with a half-hearted goodbye, the silence he left was deafening. The shame crept back like a tide. The gifts she'd taken from him, the affection she'd never returned, the weight of every false smile, the regret, the inadequacy, the sheer humiliation of being erased from this world, his world. She felt it all pressing down until she could barely breathe. This was why she'd avoided him, why she couldn't bear to cross his path. He was like a mirror she couldn't stand to look into because all he reflected was her. All he reflected was her worst self. Well, someone is quite the smitten kitten, Rarity teased, her laugh light and unknowing. But when her gaze flicked to Sunset's face, her own smile faltered. Oh, sorry, I always forgot you and Flash used to be an item. That's funny. That's part of the movie. The words hit harder than they should have. Sunset swallowed the knot in her throat and forced her voice into something steady, detached. It's alright, I never liked him. I was just using him to become more popular. She delivered it as it were she delivered it as if it were nothing, just another fact. But the girl's stifled expressions told her exactly how bad it sounded. Heat crawled up on her neck. She shrank in herself, her voice smaller now. Yeah, I was pretty awful, I know. The other girls mumbled half-hearted grunts of agreement, obviously not wanting to lie, but still trying to be polite. And then it was Pinky. Yep, the girl exclaimed way more cheerfully than was merited, setting in an awkward atmosphere that lasted just a few seconds. Afterwards, the conversation quickly moved on without her, the others easily slipping back into music talk, laughter, and planning. Sunset sat apart, her thoughts circling like vultures, dragging her back to places she'd give anything to forget. She tried to distract herself with homework, with music, but her thoughts kept coming back to Flash, her heart aching in ways she couldn't fully explain. She didn't want him back, she knew that much, but being erased from his world entirely? That stung worse than she expected. It was proof that she had never mattered at all. By contrast, Flash wanted Twilight to be there. He'd asked about her with that hopeful tone in his voice, as if her presence could make everything better. Sunset clenched her fist tighter. He didn't know half of it. Sunset had the means to contact her whenever she wanted. The journal sat just a few feet away in the backpack, heavy as stone, waiting. But what was the difference? Wasn't it? Well, that was the difference, wasn't it? Flash longed for a chance to see her again, while Sunset, with that chance already in her grasp, couldn't bring herself to use it. Twilight had been kind, true, generous even, but she was also the perfect replacement. the princess who stepped in Sunset's role with grace, warmth, and effortless brilliance. Everything Celestia had ever wanted. Everything Sunset felt to be. She had begun to try and shake off the impossible expectations from her former mentor, yet Twilight was a reminder that those expectations weren't impossible at all, just out of Sunset's grasp. Jealousy flared like a match struck too close to her skin, and she had to force her breathing steady, as though sheer willpower could keep the demon beneath her ribs from clawing its way out. No, writing the Twilight was the worst idea imaginable. Celestia had said the journal would help her, but Sunset knew better. She had just wanted to sever the last tether between them, cast her off for good. The thought was as freezing. The thought was as freeing as it was suffocating. Sunset exhaled slowly, dragging her math homework out of her backpack in front of her like a shield. Numbers, equations, anything but this spiral. If she let herself keep thinking, she wasn't sure that what pieces of her would be left. Sunset was just about doubling their homework now. Losing herself in numbers was easy, even with the chaotic cacophony that the girls called a musical rehearsal in the background. Granted, when they would ask, she listened to them play the full song and give commentary, but for the most part she was left alone, which was appreciated. She wrote the last answer on the sheet of paper in front of her, and was about to put away her materials and announce her departure, since she really didn't want to be there alone with her thoughts, when suddenly Pinky's face appeared right in front of her. "Sunset!" she exclaimed happily, making Sunset recoil. Um, Sunset shifted her chair away from the girl and futilely, I don't think I've ever heard someone futilely tried to grab her backpack without looking at it. "Are you enjoying this so far?" Pinky asked, her smile innocent and happy as usual. Not really." The sincere words escaped her before she could think of a lie. "Aw, bummer." The girl pouted and then grabbed a chair and sat next to Sunset. "But I figured you weren't having fun." She sighed, reclining against the other seat and giving Sunset a sideways glance. "Are you sure you don't want to play with us?" "Ask them," came out a bitter reply as she pointed the Rainbow Dash and the others with her head. "I'm asking you, silly," was Pinky's cheeky response. Sunset simply grimaced. "What does it matter?" She clenched her jaw. "You already have a perfectly functioning band. I wouldn't want to intrude." She nodded thoughtfully. "So you want to play, but you feel like you don't fit with us." Sunset flinched. How was Pinky able to read her so easily? It was a little unsettling, honestly. She tried to deny it, but the words eluded her. "That's right." Pinky patted her back with so much strength and enthusiasm, Sunset had to brace herself not to fall off the chair. "The showcase is nearly a month away. I'm sure we'll be all. The showcase is nearly a month away. I'm sure we'll all be closer by then." Whatever. Sunset rolled her eyes, not believing in her words for a second. In the meantime, Pinky reached into her pocket, pulled out a lollipop, and presented it to Sunset. "Here, it'll make you feel better." "Huh?" Sunset took the sugary sweet with unsure hands and eyed the bright red caramel with the raised eyebrow. What was she supposed to do? Suck on a lollipop until her existential crisis dissolved? She looked up and stared at the other girl like she'd grown a second head. She didn't think she had picked up on the fact that she was feeling rather miserable, but here she was offering her candy for comfort. "We're friends, Sunset," Pinky reassured her, a bright smile on her face, "even if you don't see it yet." Sunset's lips pressed into a line. Rainbow had said the same thing the other day, and to her credit, she had been trying. The others were kind too, but they still felt like more like polite strangers than anything else. Friends felt too heavy of a word, almost foreign, and yet Pinky's face was so earnest. Sunset recalled the pastries that had shown up on her desk at lunch, all those little moments of thoughtfulness that showed she did care to some extent. A hesitant curve tugged at the corner of her mouth before she could stop it. "Friends," she echoed softly. "Sure." Pinky's grin exploded, and she threw her arms around Sunset before she could react. The hug was warm, all-encompassing. For a second, Sunset almost forgot to tense up, caught off guard by how grounding it felt. By the time she thought about pulling away, it was already over. Pinky bounced back to her feet as if nothing happened. "Come on, stay and listen to us play some one more time, all right?" she asked, hopeful. "We're getting there, I can feel it." "All right," Sunset nodded, the word more automatic than genuine, but it seemed to satisfy Pinky. The girl then ran back to her friends, breaking up an argument between Rainbow Dash and Applejack, and promptly convincing them to try it from the top one more time. Sunset put her notebook and pencil inside her backpack and then leaned back against the chair nonchalantly, putting the lollipop inside her mouth. It was a bit too sweet for her taste, but perhaps it was just what she needed right now to balance out her earlier bitterness. As the girls started playing, Sunset couldn't help noticing that they sounded significantly more in sync than the previous times. She wasn't sure what they'd been discussing before, but it certainly seemed to have done the job. Not only that, they actually seemed to be enjoying themselves as they played, smiling at each other, bouncing with rhythm, and even doing little twirls and jumps in Rainbow's case. It was a bit annoying, honestly. Annoying in how infectious it was. Perhaps it was the sweet lollipop in her mouth or the lingering warmth of the earlier hug. Whatever the case, Sunset found her own foot tapping the ground, matching the beat of Pinky's drums. She even focused on Rainbow's playing and imagined herself doing it instead. They were such simple chords that she definitely could. No, no. She shook her head. She didn't want to participate in the showcase. She didn't want to join the band. And she certainly didn't want to get her hopes up, only to end up disappointing when the inevitable rejection came. Even so, the music drowned out those painful words inside her head like they were nothing, until she couldn't hear them anymore and a smile appeared on her face. For a single moment of time, no longer than a heartbeat, everything was perfect. The guitar shimmered, the voices blended like sunlight, and her own foot kept the beat as if she belonged there with them. And then the strangest thing ever happened. 2 dots of white light appeared on Rainbow's head, quickly turning into pony ears. A moment later, her hair grew longer and blue wings spread from her back as well. Sunset inhaled sharply and her heartbeat grew to impossible speeds as she witnessed a similar transformation happening with the other girls, reminiscent of the night they defeated her with the power of the crown she had stolen. But how? The crown had gone back to Equestria. There shouldn't be any magic left in the human world. Except there was, wasn't it? It had never left. The girls in front of her were glowing with the same impossible magic that had forever crowned her just demon. That forever crowned her a demon. But their magic. It wasn't like hers. It wasn't monstrous. This magic was radiant, joyous, beautiful. It made them shine, made them whole. I have the fucking fan on. Hope that's not annoying. It's just hot. I'm sorry. It's New Mexico. A cold chill slid down her spine. What more proof do you need than this? The demon whispered, reverberating like an echo inside her chest. You don't belong. You'll never will. She wanted to run, to scream, to punch something, but she couldn't move. She was frozen as a statue. Even as the song ended, she didn't say or do anything. She just kept staring at the girls with wide eyes, heart thumping in her ears like it wanted to drown out the lingering echoes of the music. Did you see that? Rainbow exclaimed, her pony trace fading as soon as she stopped playing music. That was totally awesome! She jumped in excitement, looking at the other girls. How exactly did that happen? Applejack's reaction was more confused than anything. I mean, I'm not complaining, but I thought Twilight had taken all the magic with her. I'm not sure. Rarity was feeling her ears as if she couldn't believe they'd been pony ears just moments ago. Maybe some of the magic remained inside of us. Maybe. Fluttershy answered contemplatively. And it's so fucking hard to say, contemplatively, trying to peer behind her back as if she expected her wings to still be there. Then all of them turned to look at Sunset as if she was supposed to have the answer somehow. She stiffened in her chair, hugging her backpack tightly. Any idea, Sugar Cube? Applejack's voice cut through the air casual, but to Sunset it felt like a bright spotlight pointed straight at her face. She acted before she could think. Her hands were trembling so badly she nearly tripped over her own chair as it clattered to the floor. I have to go. The words tumbled out of her throat clumsily. Raspy. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, only flee. Sunset! Pinky's voice chased her down the hall, bright and desperate. Sunset flinched. She didn't dare look back. She couldn't look at their faces, not when the only thing waiting in her chest was shame. She wanted to escape from the magic, from the music, from that gnawing certainty that she would never belong. But no matter how fast she ran, it was already inside of her, pressing down, consuming her whole. I just ended up chapter 13. That one felt short too. I don't know. Notes. Poor Sunset. Honestly, sometimes I feel bad for the things I can put her through. But things can only get worse, so much before they get better, right? By the way, I wrote a one-shot about that night Sunset spent with Flash. It's not explicit, but it's psychologically heavy, and it gives more context about Sunset's thought process at the time. It's called Playing the Part. Okay, so I might read that. But I feel like I feel like the author could have included in the story, but I don't know. I guess it's kind of maybe long or something. I don't know. It might feel like it's going off topic or something. Chapter 14, The Last Light. Content warning. This chapter contains themes of depression, self-loathing, I can say it right, suicidal ideation that comes close to action is safe only after the break. So like you can say words like that, right, and it won't like mess up your video, right? As long as it's like deep in the video or it might like trip me. I don't know. Maybe I'll try to like censor it, I don't know. Chapter 14, The Last Light. Sunset stared out of the bus window towards the unfamiliar streets. She wasn't sure where she was going. All she knew was that she wanted to be as far away as possible from Candlelight High, from the girls, from Flash, from Celestia, from everything and everyone she had ever known. Perhaps it was stupid, but she couldn't bring herself to care. She'd simply taken the first bus without a clear destination in mind. Not that it mattered. Nothing mattered anymore. I need like some chapstick or something. Like this is getting out of hand. Nothing mattered anymore. She let her head rest on the window's cracked crystal, chewing on a lollipop stick that had long since lost any trace of sweetness, and she felt hot tears stream down her face in relentless waves. She was thankful for this particular bus route seemed to be mostly empty, because the last thing she needed was someone asking if she was okay. Despite her best efforts, the scene from earlier replayed in her mind one more time. The magical transformation, the way the girls had literally shined as bright stars, and the question, why had it happened? She hated herself for not knowing the answer. Still, she supposed the simplest explanation was that a fragment of the crown's magic had remained in the human world, turning the girls into pony-fied versions of themselves, and turning Sunset into a demon. She sighed. How ironic that the object she'd stolen would curse her this way. It had been bad enough when she was the only one transforming, but now with this new development, she felt like the equestrian magic itself was rejecting her as a pony, and labeling her as a monster instead. She closed her eyes tightly and tried to concentrate on the sound of the bus's loud engine instead, as if it could somehow drown out her thoughts. Ironically, just then, the bus stopped and roaring simmered down, as if the universe itself was trying to deny her what little comfort she could have found. Last stop, the driver announced. Groaning, she opened her eyes again, grabbed her backpack, and dragged herself off the bus. Once her feet hit the ground, she wiped off her tears and looked around. Surprising that the bus had left her in a relatively well-off neighborhood. Was she in the city now? Picking a street at random, she kept walking without a real plan in mind. She simply concentrated on putting one foot in front of the other, on counting the cracks of the asphalt. She simply concentrated on putting one foot in front of the other, on counting the cracks in the asphalt and hearing the crunch of the autumn leaves as she walked. After a while, she found a steady pace, almost hypnotic. She could have easily gone on forever. And then she found herself facing a set of stairs, framed by thick red metallic beams on one side of the sidewalk and a thin tubular railing on the other. She stopped and looked up, realizing she'd reached some kind of sort of bridge that went over the canal. Figuring it didn't matter anyway since she didn't have any real plan, she started going up the stairs and continuing her walk from there. She wasn't sure off. She looked off to the horizon as she strolled, realizing that the sun was already starting to set, painting everything with oranges and reds that somehow looked dull. Even the glaring reflection of light on the water appeared dim. She wasn't sure why, but she stopped and rested her arms on the cold metal beams that acted as a sort of railing, leaning over to look at the water below. It was flowing at a steady, calming pace like liquid gold under the sunset's light, but it was difficult to see from her position. Realizing that her feet were starting to hurt anyways because of how much she walked, she balanced carefully as she lifted herself onto the beam, perching on the edge despite the unnerving drop down below. Although the cold was uncomfortable as it seeped into her body from the beam, she found herself relaxing in this position, just looking out at the time of day that was her namesake, and listening to the flow of the water, the passing cars, and the howling of the wind. She let out a shuddering breath, letting her tears flow once more. She wasn't exactly sure what she was doing here, and with her life in general. She had no way of returning to Equestria, of fulfilling her dream of becoming an alicorn princess. She couldn't even be Celestia's pupil. With a bright future ahead of her, no matter what she chose to do afterwards, she was simply stuck in the human world, serving her sentence by trying to befriend 5 human girls who never would accept her as one of them. Her hands clenched on the railing, flashing out and scraping the metal, but she didn't care. She was a demon, and it was about the time she accepted that. It was all she'd ever be. Of course she couldn't make friends. Of course she couldn't take it. Let me lock the fuck in. Of course she couldn't make friends. Of course she couldn't make a future for herself in this world either. She had been rejected by two different realities, told in bold letters that she wasn't allowed to exist in either of them, and it hurt. The realization felt like a dagger, made of burning ice, twisting inside her chest. Trying to let out her frustration in any way possible, she grabbed the chewed up lollipop stick that still remained in her mouth, glared at it, and threw it as hard as she could. Still, its light weight and the wind blowing it back towards the bridge meant that, after falling for a few seconds, it landed almost directly under Sunset. It bobbed briefly, helpless against the current, and she briefly wondered if she herself looked just as small and directionless. Sunset sighed. That hadn't been cathartic at all. Then as she kept staring at the spot where it had landed, creating ripples too small to be seen from where she was, she became acutely aware of how easy it would be for her to follow it, all the way down to the running waters. She shuddered at the thought, but still couldn't shake it. Her eyes were completely fixed on the spot where the stick had landed, even though she couldn't see it anymore. The waters looked as inviting as they were terrifying. The gravitational pull she felt was comparable to that of spiraling, a deep black hole. She clutched the beam she was sitting on even tighter, as if to prevent herself from acting on her darkest impulses, her whole body tensing up and becoming as rigid as a statue. Yet as she thought about it more and more, she realized, would it even matter? If she were to actually jump, to disappear forever into the cold waters below, would anyone even care? Would they look for her? Would they mourn her? Would they even remember her? As more tears squeezed out of her eyes, she realized the painful answer. There was no one here, and no pony in Equestria that would care if she died. Why would they? She was no one. Just a falling prodigy turned villain. No friends nor family to name for her name. She was just a burden to everyone who tried to get close to her out of pity. The gravitational pull became stronger. Suddenly her legs were made of lead. How easy would it be just to slip a bit closer to the edge, to let go of the beam and allow gravity to finish the job? Maybe it'd be for the best. Maybe if there was an afterlife, it'd treat her better than this one. Hey! A hesitant voice interrupted her dark thoughts, making her eyes snap open. She knew that voice. Sunset turned her head, and for a heartbeat, she thought she was seeing a ghost. This girl was the splitting image of Twilight, save for the thick-framed glasses on top of her nose and the stiff uniform she wore. She even had the same purple-colored dog walking next to her. Sunset blinked, trying to make sense of what she was seeing.
You probably shouldn't sit there. It's dangerous.
The girl stammered uncomfortably, turning her gaze away into the pavement. It was obvious she wasn't used to talking to people, yet she still had made the effort to call out to her. For some reason she couldn't explain, Sunset felt embarrassed that the girl had seen her like this, flustered. She quickly swung her legs back over the railing and dropped down, startling when she felt her feet actually touch the solid ground. Thanks, she mumbled. The girl nodded stiffly, still not looking at her, and then continued her walk briskly as if trying to get as far away from the scene as possible. However, she looked back at regular intervals, as if making sure Sunset was still there. Meanwhile, Sunset's eyes followed her until she couldn't see her anymore. That was Twilight, undoubtedly. It couldn't be anyone else, just not the princess, her human counterpart. She had saved her? The realization hit like a ton of bricks, making her legs feel weak and turn. She had to brace herself against the railing to avoid collapsing. Capsuling? The fuck? She wasn't sure what she would have done had she been left alone with her thoughts just a bit longer, and that realization shook her to the core. But this girl, this stranger, had appeared out of nowhere just at the right time. She hadn't even said much, but her presence had been enough. The fact that she looked just like Twilight didn't escape her either. It felt like a sign, like fate. She suddenly became aware of the weight of the journal tucked tightly inside her backpack. The journal that would allow her to connect with the actual Princess Twilight. Something that suddenly didn't seem as daunting anymore. Letting out a shuddering breath, she wiped off her tears and began retracing her steps down the high sidewalk. Despite it being darker than before, she somehow felt like she could see more clearly and the light wasn't as dull as it had been. As she made her way down the stairs and off the bridge, she looked back at the canal that almost claimed her life and realized That the waters no longer glared with gold and red of the sun. The waters no longer glared with gold and red of the sunset, but shimmered with purple and pink of twilight. It was late at night. Oh, that was low-key poetic. Wait a minute. Nah, no, never mind. It was late at night when Sunset found herself walking down the street that had recently begun to feel familiar to her. The pavement was illuminated by moonlight and by the warm glow of many streetlights lined up on either side of the street, making it easier for her to find her way towards the elegant white houses where she now lived. She hugged herself as she got closer, trying to ward off the cold to no avail. The fall's chilly wind was relentless that night, and truthfully, all she wanted to do was lay down in her bed, snuggle beneath the covers, and forget this day ever happened. She just hoped Celestia and Luna had both gone to sleep already. But if Luna was awake, that also wouldn't be a bad development. All her hopes were crushed, however, when she stopped at the garden gate and saw Celestia, sitting under the warm light of a porch, anxiously clutching her phone and typing on it. Only then did Sunset remember the existence of her own phone, how it lay turned off at the bottom of her backpack despite Celestia insisting multiple times that she keep it on, in case they had to reach her for whatever reason. Her stomach dropped when she realized this was probably one of such situations. Her fingers twitched anxiously, her palms becoming sweaty as she imagined the inevitable outcome. Celestia would get mad at her, yell at her for not obeying instructions, for coming so late at night without saying anything. She could already see the disappointment in her eyes and hear her anger in her voice. A cold sweat ran down her spine, and she took a step back. She should have never come here. She should have gone to her old place, as dilapidated as it was. At least there was no one there to scold her. No one who would care if she arrived at a different time than usual. There was still time. The way was long, sure, and she was pretty tired, but if she hurried, then... Sunset! The voice cut deeper than the cold autumn air. It seemed Sunset had lingered a little too long at the fence's door and had been spotted. She tried to move, but was completely frozen at the spot, like a deer in headlights, as the last person she wanted to see walked briskly towards her. Celestia opened the door hastily, and without hesitation, as if she was scared Sunset would run away if she took too long. Truthfully, she would have if she had been able to move. Sunset! Celestia repeated, now standing in front of her. Her expression and her voice were filled with apprehension? Worry? No, it couldn't be. Where have you been? She asked, her voice rising an octave as her hands came down to the girl's shoulder, clutching them tightly, almost painfully. I called you 1,000,000 times. You didn't pick up. I thought... She cut her voice off, voice faltering at the last part. Sunset could have sworn that she even saw tears sitting at the corner of her eyes, and felt her hands trembling, barely containing relief and fear in equal measures. Probably just her mind playing games on her. There was no way Celestia was actually worried. She shuffled her feet, unsure of what to say. Her voice was raspy because of how much she'd been crying. She knew her eyes probably looked puffy and pathetic, and her defeated posture betrayed just how tired she felt. Her voice died in her throat, and her entire body stiffened as she pulled into a tight, warm hug. She had braced herself for the sun's punishing fire, but instead found herself drowning in its tender warmth. It didn't make any sense. Something was wrong, it had to be. Her heart hammered, panic and weariness warring inside of her. For a moment, she thought about pulling away, but that thought alone felt heavier than her body could manage. Instead, she simply slumped against Celestia's torso, not returning the hug but still letting gravity pull them closer, her arms hanging awkwardly at her sides. I was so worried, Celestia mumbled, voice cracking with vulnerability like Sunset had never heard from her, either Celestia. Please never do that again. The plea was raw, small, not an order or a command, but a sincere request, coming from a place of anxiety and sorrow. For some reason, Sunset felt the urge to say something, to reassure her that she wouldn't, that everything would be alright now, but she stopped herself. Why would she care about Celestia? Why would Celestia care about her? Why would any of this matter? It's okay, what matters is that you're home now, Celestia mumbled, raising her chin on Sunset's head. You're safe, I've got you. It was then, as the hug stretched longer and the warmth from Celestia's body seeped into the darkest cracks of Sunset's heart, that her nose finally caught the scent of the woman hugging her so tenderly. She smelled like the memory of summer, soft and golden, a breath of blooming petals carried on warm air, mingled with the gentle sweetness of vanilla and something older, deeper, like sunlight caught in silk. It was the kind of scent that wrapped around you slowly, like the quiet calm before dawn, comforting, constant, familiar, like home, like her. Suddenly, Sunset was a small foal again, curled against Celestia's soft fur, tucking gently under her wing, basking on her warmth and her closeness, being comforted after a particularly rough day of school. Normally, these kinds of memories triggered all the nastiest thoughts inside her, but wrapped by the same warmth that had once rejected her, the same one she'd missed all this time, all she could do was hold tightly like a lifeline, letting her tears spill out in waves. Finally, the pressure inside her chest broke, and she let the sobs rack through her. She didn't resist when the arms around her tightened, and Celestia's warmth held back the cold of the night. Celestia was worried about her. She missed her. She cared. Those words repeated in her head, like a record with only one track, impossible to escape, impossible to deny, and the feelings they sparked traveled all the way to her heart and filled it with a healing light she wasn't sure she'd ever felt before. The moment stressed forever with every sob, yet when it finally passed, it felt as though it had vanished in a heartbeat. Celestia held her close, caressed her hair, and whispered reassurances as Sunset cried, not one chastising her for what happened, nor asking where she'd been. Her focus was on making sure Sunset understood she was safe now. Despite her lingering disbelief, Sunset's sobs eventually subsided enough for her breathing to come out in tiny shuddering breaths, and for her hands to relax their hold on Celestia. That was when the woman gently led her into the house, keeping her arm around Sunset's shoulders, like she feared the girl would disappear the second she let go. Once inside, she led her to a big comfy couch in the living room and just sat there. "Do you want hot cocoa?" she asked, "or tea, or anything really?" Sunset looked up at her, teary-eyed and utterly exhausted, and nodded as she answered with a raspy voice, "Cocoa is fine." Celestia gave her a stiff nod and quickly disappeared into the kitchen, leaving Sunset alone with her thoughts. She took off her backpack and threw it on the ground, her jacket and boots following suit soon after. Then she pulled one of those cushions under her arms, hugging it tightly as if she could replace the warmth she just lost. The velvet pressed against her cheek as she sank into the sofa, letting her eyes drift shut. She focused on the muffled clatter and the faint hiss of boiling milk coming from the kitchen. Soon the sweet aroma of cocoa began to seep through the house, wrapping her like a blanket. The heater hummed softly, letting her cling to the last traces of Celestia's warmth still lingering in her body. In that moment, a sudden thought crept in, like roots growing in fertile soil. She was glad she made it back. Just then, Celestia returned to the living room, carrying 2 mugs in her hand. "I just texted Luna," she announced as she went to sit next to Sunset. "She was looking for you, but she should be back soon." Sunset's stomach twisted with guilt upon knowing she had caused distress to the younger sister too, but she tried not to think about it. Instead, she put away the cushion she'd been holding and grabbed the offered beverage, muttering out a quiet "thanks" as she did. The mug was hot, but not scalding, just warm enough to ward off the cold and fight its way into Sunset's freezing hands. She took a tentative sip and smiled at the sweetness. She couldn't remember the last time she'd had hot cocoa, but it had definitely been too long. After a few moments of silence, the two of them simply enjoying their drinks side by side, Celestia finally spoke. "How are you feeling?" Her voice was quiet, tentative. Sunset simply shrugged in response. Truthfully, she was feeling a lot better, but not enough to say she was okay. Although hours had passed, the moment at the bridge and the knowledge of what could have happened still clung to her with a cold grip and sent chills down her spine. Celestia let out a sigh, hesitating before speaking again. "I'm just glad you came back." Her hands tightened around her mug, her voice small and strained as she stared at the liquid. "I don't know what I would have done if you didn't." Sunset blinked and spoke, surprising them both. "I'm sorry." She hung her head, realizing that she meant it. She never intended to make Celestia worry, no matter how strained their relationship had been up to that point. She didn't think she would worry. She didn't know she would care if she came back at all. But now that she knew, the guilt crept in her before she could stop it. "You don't have to apologize," she responded, voice warm and reassuring. "What matters now is that you're here." Sunset nodded, feeling Celestia's eyes on her, but being unable to meet them. She almost wished the woman would chastise her. She certainly felt like she deserved it. Being met with this unconditional kindness and acceptance instead made her feel worse somehow. Why? The question that escaped Sunset's lips was small and fragile, but earnest. Damn. Why do you even care? I've been a brat all this time. I barely even tolerate you. Her eyes squeezed tightly, but they were so dry that the tears didn't come. The expected tears didn't come. So why? Her question was cut off as she felt Celestia shifting awkwardly on the couch next to her, as if she herself was unsure or uncomfortable with the answer. After a moment, she spoke. Her voice was shaky, almost ashamed. Because you remind me of... She trailed off, and the confession was left incomplete. But something was clear. The weight of her words settled between them, like a boulder slowly sinking in a lake. It seemed Sunset hadn't been the only one projecting in this relationship. Luna? She ventured the obvious guess with a small voice. Celestia tensed up and kept looking up ahead as if the coffee table in front of them had suddenly become the most interesting thing in the world. Even though she was avoiding her gaze, Sunset could see the emotions passing through her eyes. Nostalgia, regret, shame, uncertainty. But at the end she spoke again. Luna. The word came out as quiet as a whisper, followed by a stray tear that was quickly wiped away. When she was your age, she was so rebellious. She pressed on as if the words had been waiting for years to come out. Just like you are now. Celestia let out a shuddering breath. She would yell at me, accusing me of trying to replace Mom or of only caring about her grades. She sighed, her usually perfect posture collapsing as she slumped forward. I thought I was helping. I thought if I pushed her hard enough she'd find her own path, but perhaps it was never my role to guide her at all. Sunset kept listening in a stunned silence. Sunset kept listening in a stunned silence, feeling the words echo inside her chest in ways she didn't fully understand. She stared into her cocoa, its surface trembling faintly with her breath. Something about Celestia's story scraped against a place inside her she'd avoided for a long time, so she sipped her hot beverage as if to wash down the uncomfortable thoughts with it. One day we had a particularly nasty fight. Celestia continued, her voice cracking. I yelled. She squeezed her eyes shut, as if trying to block out the memories that were physically attacking her from the inside. Still, her voice came out trembling as she spoke. I yelled at her to go away. And she did. Sunset's eyes widened, recognizing the same story that Luna had told her exactly 1 week ago. Except Luna had put all the blame on herself and her teenage desire for independence. And now Celestia was claiming her responsibility instead, each of them carrying the weight of their burden that neither was meant to hold on their own. Strangely, the idea of adults, especially Celestia and Luna being so flawed, carrying past baggage even to this day, felt oddly reassuring. They weren't perfect. Celestia wasn't infallible. She made mistakes, just like everyone else. She wasn't an immortal deity. She was just a woman. The realization, paradoxically, made Sunset respect her more. I was so worried, Celestia continued, unaware of Sunset's thoughts. When she didn't come back, when she wouldn't contact me for months, then years. Finally, a stray tear fell from her eyes, but she quickly wiped it away. I don't ever want to go through that again. Finally, she turned to look at Sunset, her gaze earnest, almost desperate. I'm so glad. So glad you came back. The words hit her like a gut punch. As she realized the depth of Celestia's trauma and the way she'd unintentionally made her relieve it all that night. She wasn't sure what to say, but silence felt cruel in the situation, and so she did the only thing she could think of instead. She settled her mug on the coffee table and then, hesitantly, carefully, she rested her head on Celestia's shoulder. She felt the woman stiffen at the unexpected closeness, and she also stiffened in turn, half expecting rejection. But then Celestia relaxed and wrapped her arms around Sunset. She felt the woman stiffen at the unexpected closeness, and she also stiffened in return, but half expecting rejection. But then Celestia relaxed and wrapped her arm around Sunset, pulling her closer and letting her rest fully at her side. No more words were spoken. The silence was filled only by the sound of their breathing, and Sunset found herself unable to keep her eyes from closing for much longer. Truthfully, she'd barely fought it. She was too exhausted, too comfortable, and too warm. Most importantly, she felt safe here, in this couch, held by the woman that just hours earlier had felt more like a painful echo of her past than a real person. But now, for the first time in years, Sunset finally felt. But now, for the first time in years, Sunset finally was somewhere she felt like she belonged. She was home. So the author made a drawing for this chapter, and it's on Tumblr. I guess I'll put the Tumblr link in the description, but I'll have the picture on the video. I guess it's pretty. It's a pretty good drawing. Honestly, didn't expect. This is actually pretty high level quality. I wouldn't expect this. I mean, obviously, like AO3 writer, all AO3 writers are fucking goated at everything. Like they're the most fucking like goated as people in the world. But I still wasn't expecting like this quality of an illustration. And it has like a like the memory of Celestia, of this pony, and a memory of Luna. And you can see that Luna has the same leather jacket on too. It's a really fitting picture. Notes. Well, this chapter is pretty heavy, isn't it? But honestly, it's my personal favorite in the fic so far. Let me know what you think. And yes, that was Saitwa in the bridge. Unfortunately, that's the only instance she'll appear in this fanfic, because I couldn't find a way to integrate her organically. A shame, because I really like her. By the way, I'll take a small break after this chapter, probably just 2 weeks. But still, I want to finish the next arc before posting again. Oh, this is oh shit, this is the last this is the last chapter. Wait, is this chapter 15? Wait, oh, it's only 14 I thought there was 15 chapters. Wait, there's more than one part. Like, this is not even this, like, this. Fuck, dude. There's, like, other parts. Let me read some of the comments. You're actually such a good writer. I swear, I rejoice every time I find a fic that's just got just the perfect premise. Yeah. I binged this entire thing an hour because... Oh, shit. How should I make this fucking voice? I binged this entire thing in an hour because holy shit, it's amazing. Generally the exact fic I came to Sunset's tag looking for. Everyone's characterization is so on point. Okay, yeah, true. Honestly, it's the kind of that's the chapter. That's the author. The author says, honestly, it's the kind of fic I was looking for in Sunset. When I couldn't find it, I decided to write it myself. Yeah. Good shit, honestly. And then that was written just November 2025. It was not that long ago. And this guy says, muy bien capítulo, aunque creo que los ponía si comían carne, ya que recuerdo que Twilight comía hamburguesas o algo así. So it's a very good chapter, although I think I don't know. Oh, I think she fucking would eat meat. Twilight ate hamburgers. Twilight ate hamburgers in the show. Is that true? Oh shit. The author responded in Spanish too. Twilight solo como hamburguesas de verdad en el mundo humano. En la primera película, the Equestria Girls. So she only ate hamburgers in the first movie. But I still feel like that's... That the writers like acknowledge the fact that she was eating hamburgers. They're vegetarian in the pony world. I didn't know that. I mean, I just never thought about it. I mean, like the animals talk and stuff. So, loving this story so far. Excellent emotional character work at this point in Sunset's journey. The interaction she has as she broaches tentative ground with other characters is wonderful. Yeah. I had no idea I needed the Sunset and Luna bond, but dear God, I did. True. Like, the Sunset Luna stuff was honestly, like, the best moments, in my opinion. And, let's see what her comments are. Or maybe let's look at the other parts, see how many parts there are of this. Hold on. This is the one where Flash, the Flash one where Flash is where she is with Flash and regrets it. So how do I find the full oh, so it's just the only the other oh fuck. The other work is just the Flash thing. And I guess I'll read it. It's only 2,000 words. But at the same time, it has some really. I don't even know if I can fucking read this on YouTube. Hold on, let me just skim this. I'm gonna see if there's any like any what's it called? Explicit like language. Well, it's not directly saying anything, but I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can like even read this, because I know it's supposed to be teenagers, but like, it's not explicitly like describing it, obviously. But I don't know. Maybe it'll be too far on YouTube for me to read this. So I guess. When was she last updated this? Let's see. I don't know that. I'm not on L3 enough to know where the fucking like dates are for shit. Updated December 29th. Okay, so has it been 2 weeks? Oh yeah, it's been just over 2 weeks. So maybe it's gonna be a new chapter soon. And I'll look at her other work, see what else she has. Banished songs. What is this? Adagio Dazzle. Oh my god, Adagio Dazzle. I'm gonna have to read that. Oh shit. That was written just like 10 days ago. Or yesterday. What the fuck? Where Sunshine Lingers. This one's about Twilight. This one's 20,000, 30,000 words. But this is stuff about the Crystal Prep, the side twile. And it's Psy set, which is literally like my favorite thing. And oh shit. She has one work about Little Witch Academia. This shit is 500,000 words, almost 600,000 words long. I thought the work I just read would be her longest, but or him, her, his, their longest. So yeah, definitely go to TaniaHylian's page and drop kudos, drop comments, everything you can. That's the end of the story for now, and I'll probably read more of it when some more chapters are released. So, without further ado, I don't know why I said what the fuck I said that. Bye.